Just one more solid hit, and he'd be checking into a permanent hospital stay, potentially ruining his entire family for good. However, that pivotal second completely changed his fate, transforming him into the most frightening new prodigy the planet had ever witnessed. We live in a world where rich kids essentially purchase their martial arts mastery using high-priced resources. Meanwhile, this broke high schooler joined a brutal, legal fighting ring simply to earn enough money for his school tuition. Our hero managed to survive 3 incredibly bloody rounds, only to be ambushed by a professional fighter who was rigging the results. This cheap shot artist shattered his bones and loudly promised to permanently destroy his fighting career. However, just as that deadly last punch was about to land, something in his mind totally snapped, and a mysterious digital interface suddenly flashed into existence right in front of him. This absolutely overpowered system would give him the ability to perfectly master decades worth of martial arts training in an instant. Training in mere seconds and smash his high and mighty oppressors into fine dust. We need to rewind time and find out exactly how a desperate student went from scraping by to becoming a literal god of war. Our narrative begins with a high-stakes clash, 2 fighters exchanging blows in a blur of motion. You can practically hear the sound of bone on bone echoing through the facility as a powerful kick slams into a solid block. The exchange doesn't pause for breath, as a heavy follow-up strike is redirected at point-blank range. You can almost feel the shockwaves emanating from these two, relentlessly testing each other's defenses. Meet our main guy, Suhang, completely shirtless and glistening with sweat as he throws a devastating punch. He's not just going through the motions, he's pouring his entire soul into every single move he makes. His sparring partner recoils in pain, grabbing his arms and gasping out that it felt like pure agony. It's immediately obvious that Suhan operates on a completely different level than the other students in the gym. The spiky-haired guy looks completely shocked, asking if Suhan's diamond fist has actually reached the mythical subtle stage. Suhan just casually mentions he hit that benchmark 2 days prior, treating it like it's absolutely nothing. To understand the achievement, martial arts skill levels are broken down into 5 grades: beginner, proficient, subtle, master, and perfection. Our main character is already comfortably in the 3rd tier, while his classmates are still struggling with the most basic fundamentals. Back in the training gym, Suhan's buddy is hyped up, telling him that when it comes to the diamond fist technique, absolutely nobody in the class can even come close. He truly is the undeniable king of the training hall. But Suhan isn't content being a big fish in this tiny puddle. Even as the other students start packing up their gear, he's already returned to his fighting stance, eager to push his buddy past its absolute limits. His buddy jokingly calls him a training maniac on his way out to grab some dinner, leaving Suhan completely alone in the enormous arena. While everyone else dreams of dinner, Suhan is obsessed with power. Just as he waves goodbye, Teacher Lai works over, appearing quite serious. It turns out the instructor had specifically been looking for him, and he certainly isn't here to devout high fives. The teacher looks at him directly and asks if he plans to apply for the martial arts department. He knows Suhan possesses the necessary talent, but he also knows there's a massive roadblock in the way. The registration fee is a staggering $30,000, and the deadline is rapidly approaching next Monday. For Suhan, whose family struggles financially, that amount might as well be $1 million. Suhan looks absolutely defeated, pleading for a few extra days to gather the funds. Teacher Lai looks sympathetic, but delivers the harsh truth that although he understands the family's situation, the rules are non-negotiable. As the bright lights dim in the massive gym, the entire weight of the world appears to settle onto Suhan's shoulders. He possesses the necessary skills, but the high cost of entry threatens to crush his dreams before they even have a chance to take off. He lingers in the empty hall long after everyone else is gone, training under the harsh glow of the overhead lights. Every single punch is fueled by the deep frustration that talent alone cannot provide an escape from poverty. 30,000. He grunts that impossible number with every strike, those 2 words burning into his memory. He pushes his body to exhaustion, trying desperately to punch his way out of the corner he finds himself trapped in. Let's take a look at his past, and prepare yourself, because it's genuinely heartbreaking. When he was just 3, both of his parents were killed in a brutal beast disaster, leaving him utterly alone in the ruins of a fallen world. He was taken in by his aunt and uncle, who sacrificed absolutely everything they had to support his martial arts training. He stares at their family photo, certain that success is the only way he can truly repay their immense kindness. In this chaotic era where ferocious beasts roam freely, becoming a top-tier martial artist is truly the only path to earning a serious fortune. It's a high-stakes, high-reward profession, but the initial barrier to entry is as high as a mountain. Suhan feels a deep sense of guilt gnawing at him as he looks at his reflection. He originally started training to give his family a better future, but now, his personal dreams are just making the lives even more difficult. As he returned to the suffocating confines of their apartment building late that evening, a palpable sense of dread clung to the air. The lights were burning, but the atmosphere felt thick with the weight of all the financial anxieties they carefully avoided discussing. Pausing right outside the entrance, he overheard his aunt and uncle discussing the looming rent deadline. Instead of panicking about their own precarious situation, however, they were focused solely on finding a way to pay for his registration fee. His uncle, a staunch believer, insisted Suhan's natural talent was far too valuable to be squandered. He argued that they absolutely couldn't be the obstacle preventing his future, even if it meant risking being thrown out of their home. The situation became agonizingly clear when his aunt suggested sacrificing her essential medication just to save a few dollars. His uncle immediately shot down the idea, vowing to find a second job to cover the expenses. Suhan's spirit completely broke upon hearing this. He forced himself into the apartment, attempting to appear oblivious to the conversation he just eavesdropped on. He seemed exhausted, but the real burden dragging him down was the emotional impact of this selflessness. Grasping his head in frustration, the immense pressure from his family's willingness to sacrifice felt completely unbearable. He realized he couldn't allow them to suffer for his ambitions any longer. A solution to find the money independently was absolutely necessary. His aunt offered him a strained, concerned smile, mentioning how late he had practiced and how exhausted he must feel. The boundless care for him made it physically difficult to bear witness to their financial struggles. He quickly instructed them to get some rest, assuring them that he would handle everything, but his voice lacked its characteristic certainty. His uncle simply gave him a reassuring thumbs up, telling him not to fret and go to bed. Gazing through the window of his tiny bedroom, Suhan concluded that conventional training methods wouldn't possibly generate the required $30,000 in a single week. He recognized he needed a faster, considerably more perilous path. Lying in bed staring at the ceiling, he made a firm decision to resolve his own issues. He knew exactly where a person with his particular set of talents could rapidly acquire that kind of cash. His gaze solidified with an intense new purpose. If rescuing his family required him to literally risk everything, then he was completely prepared to do precisely that. The following day found him standing before a huge, technologically advanced building. This wasn't a school gymnasium, it was a venue where people competed for stakes far exceeding a simple report card. He had arrived at the secret martial arts arena where the bouts were savage and the consequences were absolutely fatal. The audience was already bellowing for violence as the ring announcer escalated the anticipation for the upcoming fight. Suhan climbed into the ring, having shed his previous identity. He was now known as Mr. Minotaur, concealed behind a menacing red mask. Alongside him, a dramatically dressed female announcer was actively energizing the spectators. The terms were incredibly straightforward. To secure 4 victories in a row, and the $60,000 grand prize would be his. However, a single defeat meant he would leave with nothing except the likely extensive medical expenses. The audience erupted in laughter, branding him a novice and questioning if he harbored a death wish. They had witnessed countless beginners being carried away on stretchers previously, and they fully anticipated a repeat performance. The announcer girl advised him to show some intensity and engage the spectators if he hoped to survive in this environment. Unfortunately, Suhan had absolutely zero experience in generating audience hype. She provided him with some expert counsel, simply suggesting he insult them and declare them pathetic. In this kind of clandestine arena, generating hatred proved equally effective as earning adoration, provided the people kept buying tickets to watch him fight. Suhan followed her advice perfectly, letting loose a powerful bellow and labeling the entire audience weaklings. That maneuver was pure villainy, and the crowd immediately went completely berserk in response. The provocation worked flawlessly, and the spectators instantly began demanding his complete destruction. One person screamed that he wouldn't even realize how he died, yet Suhan remained perfectly centered. The excitement reached maximum intensity as the announcer shrieked for the match to commence. Threats of murder resonated throughout the stadium, but beneath his mask, Suhan maintained an expression of complete gravity. He immediately perceived the dense, murderous intent surrounding him, and for the very first time, the gravity of the circumstances truly registered. This was far from a simple sparring session, it was a brutal battle to protect his family's future. His initial challenger lunged forward, another masked fighter convinced he would swiftly dismantle the cocky newcomer. He charged aggressively, determined to finish the entire match within the opening round. Suhan stayed completely calm, instantly dissecting the challenger's movements. He observed that while his momentum was undeniable, the opponent's lower body stance was profoundly unbalanced. That was a serious tactical error. The challenger launched a glowing blue strike, but Suhan had already anticipated it perfectly. He effortlessly evaded the attack, causing his adversary to look like he was swinging at absolutely nothing. This was a critical moment for the diamond fist technique. Suhan prepared a counter-strike that appeared powerful enough to blast a hole clean through a solid concrete barrier. With a tremendous impact, Suhan's devastating strike landed squarely on the opponent's jaw, sending him tumbling backward. That subtle mastery of combat technique was absolutely incredible, demonstrating a shocking difference in strength. The opponent was launched flying across the entire ring, slamming into the ground with enough intensity to actually fracture the tiles. The audience fell completely silent for a moment, suddenly realizing this newcomer was certainly not here to play games. Minotaur, first victory, the announcer shrieked, as Suhan remained standing strong in the middle of the arena. He had already completed 25% of his journey to rescuing his family. The spectators immediately transitioned from booing to cheering, clearly captivated by the shocking brutality of the instant knockout. They began immediately clamoring for the subsequent challenger. Round 2 introduced a silver-haired powerhouse who looked like a seasoned professional, and he wasted no time telling the Minotaur that his lucky streak was officially over. Suhan remained completely composed, examining the newcomer's physique. He figured this guy was a perfect test subject to find out exactly how far his diamond fist could push a real challenger. The larger man lunged forward, and the two combatants collided right in the center of the ring. It quickly became a battle of raw force, generating an impact loud enough to make the back row jump. Suhan absorbed a phenomenal amount of power from his opponent's strikes, yet he absolutely refused to budge. He met superior strength with even more strength, planting himself firmly like an anchor against the tide. After exchanging a few blows, Suhan realized that while the opponent was strong, his own punch power was demonstrably better. He began to easily identify the structural flaws in the veteran's technique. He waited for exactly the right moment and then delivered a clean, heavy strike directly to the man's face. The impact was so flawless, you could practically observe the shockwave rippling through the opponent's entire body. Suhan noted that his opponent focused too much power on his arms and shoulders, leaving his entire waist area wide open. In a serious high-level fight, that kind of mistake is a guaranteed loss. He immediately capitalized on the opening, following up with a brutal blow to the man's exposed side. It was a perfect textbook counterattack that left zero room for the opponent to escape. The white-haired fighter launched backward through the air as if he had just been hit by a truck. Suhan was somehow making this look far too effortless for someone supposedly new to the underground fight circuit. The crowd went absolutely bonkers as the Minotaur claimed another win. He only needed 2 more victories to secure his prize money and go home. Up in a private box, a collection of wealthy VIPs in expensive suits watched with interest. One of them observed that Suhan wasn't even a quasi-martial artist yet, but his strength was way beyond a typical apprentice. The boss of the group looked down with a greedy, predatory smile. He determined that a young talent like this was absolutely perfect for match fixing, someone they could easily manipulate to rake in massive profits. Minotaur, 3 consecutive victories. The announcer screamed into the microphone. He was tearing through the competition so fast that the betting house staff were beginning to fret about the payouts. A guy wearing a fox mask, known only as White Fox, offered to go down and recruit him. His boss gave him the green light but sternly warned him not to reveal his actual rank as a true martial artist. Back in the preparation area, Suhan was starting to realize that his perfected diamond fist made these regular apprentices look like small children. He felt dangerously confident, perhaps a little too confident. In fact, he calculated that one more win would secure him the $60,000. He could almost visualize the looks on his family's faces when he handed them the cash, forgetting that the underground always has a ridiculously strong final boss. Suhan's eyes widened when his final opponent finally walked into the light. He immediately sensed an overwhelming aura coming off this person, completely different from the last three losers he had just faced. It was a White Fox. The crowd recognized him instantly, and the atmosphere shifted from excitement to complete and utter shock. This guy didn't belong anywhere near this tournament bracket. People began screaming that this was completely unfair, since White Fox was a quasi-martial artist, a level far above anyone Suhan had encountered all day. It was literally sending a great white shark into a goldfish tank. Suhan began to sweat profusely, understanding completely that this match would be a nightmare. However, he refused to back down. The prize money was right there, and he wouldn't leave without it. White Fox leaned forward, his mask obscuring a smug grin underneath. He appeared totally relaxed, as if he were simply out for a leisurely stroll in the park while everyone else was fighting for their lives. He taunted Suhan, assuring him there was no need to worry, claiming he was skilled at pulling his punches. He was obviously playing with his food and didn't even consider Suhan to be a legitimate threat. The announcer called for the final match to commence. The two combatants faced off in the ring's center, creating a tension in the air so palpable that you could have sliced it with a butter knife. They exploded into action simultaneously, moving with such phenomenal speed that they became nothing but blurry streaks. This wasn't just a basic brawl anymore. It was a high-octane collision of technique and brute force. Suhan realized his sole chance lay in finishing this rapidly. He committed entirely from the opening second, pouring every last ounce of his remaining strength into his initial attack. Their fists met with a percussive sound similar to a bomb exploding, generating a massive shockwave that rattled the entire venue. It represented the biggest clash of the night, with neither side willing to surrender an inch. Suhan's eyes widened in horror when he sensed the sheer, untamed power emanating from the Fox. His opponent wasn't just a quasi-martial artist. He was a full-fledged martial arts master deliberately holding back his strength to completely game the tournament system. Suhan was absolutely terrified, understanding that he had been entirely set up. White Fox had purposefully concealed his true abilities to lure him into a rigged match he couldn't possibly win. White Fox inhaled slowly, in a deep, measured breath. The surrounding energy began to visibly swirl around him, as he readied himself to finish the match with one definitive, crushing technique. He bellowed the name, Thunderclap Fist, unleashing a blow that moved faster than human vision could track. It collided squarely with Suhan's chest, impacting with the roar force of an actual bolt of lightning. Suhan went ape like a poorly thrown frisbee, hacking up a crimson mist as his insides suffered significant redecoration. The difference between a beginner and a pro isn't a gap. It's a terrifying, bottomless chasm of pain. The spectators immediately identified the blow as the notorious 3-echo Thunderclap Fist, a top-tier move designed for maximum damage. They unanimously agreed that the Minotaur was toast, believing no mere mortal could possibly recover from such a devastating impact. White Fox continued his assault, unleashing a whirlwind of punches while mucking Suhan to put up a better fight. He clearly enjoyed turning this match into a humiliating spectacle, flexing his superior velocity and roar strength for the crowd. Suhan was hanging on by a thread, frantically attempting to deflect the relentless downpour of strikes. He realized that if he didn't locate an opening for a counterattack immediately, he would soon be heading for dreamland against his will. White Fox moved like a phantom, tipping around to strike Suhan from every conceivable direction. This had ceased being a proper fight long ago, transforming into a humiliating and thoroughly lopsided demolition. A vicious uppercut connected squarely with Suhan, violently snapping his head back and sending his mask sailing through the air. Despite absorbing an absolutely ludicrous amount of damage, he stubbornly refused to collapse onto the mat. Another powerful impact landed, and the audience could almost hear something crack on contact. Suhan was being systematically taken apart by an opponent operating on a totally different plane of existence. Suhan slammed onto the canvas, his eyesight blurring as the darkness began to close in around the periphery. He realized his mind was shutting down as his physical form finally surrendered to the overwhelming pain. White Fox loomed over his prostrate opponent, radiating cold disdain. He announced that Suhan would receive 0 prize money for his effort, adding insult to injury by ensuring the humiliation extended to his wallet. He resembled a predator hovering over its cache, absolutely certain that the contest had concluded. The victory was assured, yet he clearly harbored further intentions for his defeated adversary. White Fox revealed his true proposal: join the team and assist in rigging future fights. If he signed up as a personal lackey, they would hand him a 60,000 payment on the spot, truly a classic opportunity to mortgage his morality. White Fox advised Suhan to consider carefully, because refusing the generous invitation was not on the table. He stressed that they possessed the necessary resources to transform his entire life into a nightmare if he declined their terms. Beneath the growing collection of blood and contusions, Suhan's gaze flamed with fiery rebellion. He declared emphatically that he would never engage in such a dishonorable act, his integrity as a fighter remaining completely unbroken. White Fox's face became completely devoid of expression. If the kid wasn't willing to negotiate, then there was no point letting him live. The decision had been made to terminate the situation permanently. He stated he would have to cripple Suhan, launching himself forward with an attack designed to sever his energy pathways. He intended to ensure the boy could never work again, making fighting an absolute impossibility for the rest of his existence. In that instant of extreme peril, Suhan's fervent ambition to master martial arts reached a breaking point. He absolutely could not afford to fail right here, especially since his family's survival hinged on his success. Just as the killing strike approached, something fundamental shifted inside Suhan. His gaze ignited with an inexplicable luminescence, and as if in slow motion, he prepared to execute one last, desperate maneuver. Internally, he roared his refusal to surrender, as a column of fiery energy suddenly burst forth around him. He literally forced his battered frame back to vertical, ignoring gravity and all the punishment he had just endured. Whitefuck stared in utter disbelief, as if he were looking at a supernatural phenomenon. He couldn't comprehend how someone could possibly remain upright, much less radiate this level of intensity, after receiving a full-power thunderclap fist. Su-han's mind was consumed by images of his aunt and uncle. He couldn't permit the sacrifices and dedication over the years to be nullified simply because his current strength was insufficient. He suddenly pictured a bleak alternate timeline where his family was devastated and he himself was confined to a wheelchair, completely incapable of assisting them. He realized he would absolutely never resign himself to such a grim destiny. In an instant, a luminous blue window materialized directly before him. It strongly resembled a futuristic user interface, complete with incomprehensible symbols and scrolling data streams. He screamed his commitment to give everything as his power skyrocketed to an entirely new echelon. Clothed in crackling lightning and vibrant aura, he resembled a divine battle deity rather than a regular teenager, signifying the long-awaited arrival of the system. When the situation seemed completely hopeless, Su-han burst into a towering column of crimson and orange fire. He bellowed that he would sacrifice absolutely anything to gain the strength necessary to safeguard his loved ones. Abruptly, the flames dissipated, and he found himself in a peculiar, completely dark vacuum. He was utterly disoriented, scanning the empty blackness with wide, confused eyes. The sound of his own declaration lingered in the void as he stayed into the emptiness. Although still battered and bleeding from the preceding fight, the intensity of his resolve remained completely undiminished. He gazed upward at the monumental digital structures of this unfamiliar dimension, completely bewildered as to his location. His shadow stretched across the floor like a monstrous silhouette as he attempted to hail anyone present. The gigantic, radiant being made of pure gold manifested before him, exuding divine energy from a throne of pure light. This figure, resembling a deity of combat, simply informed him that it would grant him this opportunity. Su-han abruptly found himself back in the physical world, now radiating a faint, golden aura. The transition was so instantaneous that it left him momentarily stunned, as the new energy whirled around him like a powerful vortex. He was standing in a high-tech digital sanctuary, complete with a floating blue status screen hovering inches from his nose. He stared at the holographic display in total confusion, as if confronted with something straight out of science fiction. The holographic display reveals his name and detailed vital statistics, including the current mastery levels for skills like Diamond Fist and Void Step. It basically transforms his entire existence into a detailed video game interface. He tentatively reaches out a finger to test if the strange screen responds to touch, finding that it does. He taps the quest tab, causing a small red notification badge to appear, signaling that he has new assignments to undertake. The quest path of the arena materializes, challenging him to improve his skills while Whitefuck impatiently waits outside. The reward offered is a beginner tutorial, which, let's face it, is exactly what he desperately needed. As he absorbs the quest prompt, a digital doppelganger of himself slowly fades into view in the background. It quickly becomes clear that this tutorial is going to be incredibly hands-on and very, very fast. Without any formal introduction, the clone launches forward with a punch powerful enough to create a small vortex of wind. Su-han's eyes widen as he scrambles to react, realizing his exact double is trying to take off his head. He manages to barely slip beneath a devastating high kick, feeling the pressure wave as the clone's foot whistles past his ear. This digital double moves with a level of speed and precision that Su-han has never before experienced. Su-han realizes, with a flash of insight, that the clone is using his own Diamond Fist technique against him. However, this version is far more refined and textbook perfect, immediately demonstrating every flaw in his current form. He grits his teeth and dives back into the conflict, trading blows with the spectral phantom. He recognizes this as a once-in-a-lifetime chance to receive real-time coaching from a flawless iteration of himself. The resulting sound of the fists colliding resonates like metal striking metal. Su-han pours every ounce of effort into each strike, desperately trying to keep pace with the clone's impeccably flawless rhythm. The clone remains utterly relentless, forcing him backward with a barrage of perfectly timed punches. It's almost as if the digital entity is specifically demonstrating the true, terrifying potential of his own abilities right in front of him. He lets out a sharp gasp as a powerful strike lands directly on his chest, sending a crushing shockwave through his body. The impact is so forceful that it completely empties his lungs, sending him stumbling backward. He skids across the floor, coughing violently and struggling to catch his breath during the recovery. He glances at his status screen and notices something incredible. His Diamond Fist proficiency bar is actively filling up. In just a few seconds, the proficiency bar has jumped to 10%. He had only been at 7% before, and he cannot believe he is improving at such an impossibly rapid pace. He wipes the perspiration from his brow and adopts a fighting stance again, looking significantly more determined than before. The system is essentially a cheat code for martial arts, and he plans to use every single second of it. The training session devolves into a blur of rapid movement as Su-han dashes frantically around the training arena. He pushes his Void Step skill to its absolute limits, leaving trails of blue light as he attempts to outmaneuver the clone. They glide in midair, their fists locked in a fierce contest of pure power. Above them, status bars update constantly, showing Su-han's Diamond Fist mastery rapidly catching up to the clone's high level. The chaotic exchange moves far too quickly for the naked eye to process, with Su-han's Void Step proficiency skyrocketing all the way to 70%. He is literally evolving in real time, with his movements becoming smoother and more lethal by the second. A long column of status bars flickers rapidly on the side of the screen as every single one of his skills begins leveling up simultaneously. It's a total sensory overload, but the resulting progress is undeniable. He lands a perfectly clean palm strike, and a notification pings that floating light palm has reached 100% proficiency. He is systematically surpassing his personal limitations one skill at a time. He gracefully weaves through another incoming attack, and his Void Step skill also reaches maximum proficiency, achieving the subtle mastery level. He is moving like an apparition now, making the clone appear as though it is stuck in slow motion. With one final, devastating punch, he finally achieves the grand achievement level for Diamond Fist. The impact creates a massive burst of light that completely illuminates the entire digital arena. Suhan stands alone in the sudden quiet, breathing heavily as the clone finally dissolves into light. He is utterly exhausted, but his entire energy signature is completely transformed from when he first started. He offers a weary nod to the empty space, mentally thanking the system for the impromptu training session. A final notification appears, announcing quest completed, and asks if he's ready to return to reality, a question he immediately answers in the affirmative. Back in the underground arena, Suhan's eyes immediately snap open as his fierce red minotaur aura ignites once again. He whispers his confirmation, and the real confrontation is finally ready to resume. White Fox is furious that he was completely ignored, calling Suhan his show-off before charging in with a flurry of strikes. He tries to overwhelm the kid with sheer speed, but something about Suhan has changed drastically. Too slow, Suhan murmurs under his breath as he casually sidesteps a punch that would have killed him just minutes ago. He is now reading White Fox's movements as easily as reading a children's book. He ducks beneath a wide looping swing and slips behind the Fox with effortless grace. He is making a supposedly experienced martial artist look like a complete amateur in front of the entire audience. Suhan coils back for a devastating counterpunch, his fist practically glowing with stored power. White Fox realizes he is in serious danger, his eyes wide with rising panic behind that mask. With a massive boom, Suhan's newly mastered diamond fist connects directly with White Fox's face, shattering his mask into 1,000 pieces. The force of the impact is so violent that it looks like an explosion. The view focuses on Suhan's intensely focused expression as he drives a final punch home. White Fox's head snaps backward with enough force to potentially break his neck, destroying both his pride and his mask in one single blow. The entire audience stared in disbelief as White Fox crashed to the ground with a sickening thud, completely out cold. No one could fathom how a novice had managed to flatten a seasoned fighter in a single hit. Suhan stood triumphantly over the defeated opponent, his bright blue eyes glowing vividly behind the empty sockets of his bull mask. He had officially claimed victory in match 4 and proven his incredible potential. He turned toward the petrified ring announcer, who was still holding her microphone in mid-air like a statue. He casually inquired about collecting his 60,000 cash prize, causing her to jump out of her skin. In the upscale VIP bucks, the syndicate boss was sweating profusely, staring at the screen with absolute shock. He simply couldn't comprehend how a simple apprentice possessed such a legendary, brand achievement diamond fist technique. He loved being surprised, so he ordered his well-dressed henchman to shatter Suhan and determine his true identity. The kid would either be forced into working for them or be permanently removed from the picture. Later that evening, Suhan walked along the deserted city streets, pens shoved deeply into his pockets. He maintained a calm exterior, but he had already detected the suspicious movements in the shadows behind him. He threw a quick glance over his shoulder, confirming that he was indeed being pursued by the bus's dunes. He certainly wasn't going to lead this crew directly to his front door. He darted into a tight alleyway, picking up speed rapidly to lose his tail. Behind him, the suits and sunglasses were sprinting frantically, desperate not to let the target out of this sight. The thugs burst into the alley, only to discover it was completely empty. They shouted in confusion, wondering where the target had vanished while realizing the boss would almost certainly murder them for this failure. Suhan was actually suspended between the walls right above the heads, holding himself up using only his limbs. He watched them scramble around below, realizing they were definitely trying to keep tabs on him. He finally made it to a towering rooftop, looking down at the city lights under the bright, silvery glow of the full moon. It had been an exhausting night, but he was finally secure enough to return home. He arrived at his modest apartment building. The lights in the windows confirmed his family was still awake. He was carrying a significant, heavy weight in his pockets, much to his delight. Inside, his aunt and uncle were staring at the colossal stack of cash on the table, looking like they had just seen a ghost. His uncle immediately demanded to know if he had just robbed a bank to get all this money. Suhan sat down and fabricated a story about working as a sparring partner at a dojo where the master recognized his fighting skills. It was a flimsy excuse, especially since he had previously labeled the place stingy. He reached out to take his aunt's hand, looking directly into both of their eyes and asking them to trust him completely. They could see the genuine sincerity in his expression even though they didn't know the full story. His uncle suddenly burst into tears, declaring that the little Han had finally made something successful out of himself. It was a tremendous emotional release for the entire family and the first time they had smiled in weeks. Later, Suhan returned to the rooftop, enjoying the quiet night air. He felt a huge wave of relief, knowing that the martial arts exam fee and the overdue rent were completely settled. He gazed up at the moon, knowing that his aunt's medical expenses were no longer going to be a burden. He had finally lifted the tremendous weight from his family's shoulders. He summoned his system interface, silently thanking it for saving him in the arena. He spotted a new statistic, martial out points at 67, and wondered exactly how he could utilize them. A notification appeared, explaining that these points were earned by defeating powerful adversaries and could be spent to improve his attributes. He decided to experiment with them right away. He started rapidly tapping the screen, allocating all of his points directly into his blood energy attribute. He was eager to discover precisely how much stronger he could become. His blood energy level instantly shot up to 90, triggering another system notification. He was reaching a new peak in power that he previously believed was impossible. A massive surge of raw energy erupted from his body, forcing his eyes to glow with an intense blue light. He could feel his heart pounding with power as his physical body underwent a dramatic transformation. He stood upright, surrounded by a swirling aura of blue and orange energy. He appeared to be an entirely different person, radiating a pressure capable of making even the most seasoned warrior tremble. He noted that reaching 90 blood energy qualified him as a quasi-warrior. It was a gigantic step forward, but he wasn't finished boosting himself yet. He mentally decided to dump every single remaining martial out point into his blood energy. He was aiming for the highest possible power, pushing the limits of what his physical body could endure. The notifications continued to scroll as his energy levels climbed even higher. He realized that his minor injuries were completely healing, and he felt significantly more resilient than before. He ripped his shirt open, admiring his newly sculpted abs and the immense power coursing through his veins. He felt utterly invincible and desperately needed a practical way to test his newfound strength. He leaped through the night air, moving at an incredible speed across the rooftops. He was headed directly toward the school's martial arts arena to find a proper testing machine. He arrived at the deserted school campus, looking completely self-assured as he searched for the combat power tester. He needed to precisely calibrate his standing before the official exams commenced. Star City's premier high school arena lay absolutely desolate, drenched in a silver moonlight glow, making it the supreme locale for a top-secret, perhaps slightly questionable, aptitude evaluation. Our hero quickly located the colossal Tier 1 combat strength evaluator, a formidable contraption built to endure monumental impacts, approaching it with the focused determination of someone about to unleash a small natural disaster. Adopting a crouched, battle-ready posture, he resolved to apply only about 70% of his full might for this initial blow, lest he accidentally impress the moon too much or, worse, attract unwanted celestial attention. As he coiled his arm back, his gaze ignited with fierce concentration, or power coalescing into his clenched hand. This marked the pivotal instant, the cosmic reckoning, for all his dedicated practice and numerous system enhancements. Emitting an enormous, concussive boom, he launched a strike so swift it seemed to shatter the very fabric of silence, his fist obliterating the machine's sensor with such cataclysmic force that the ensuing explosion illuminated the whole vicinity like a surprise disco ball. He stared at the now somewhat disassembled testing apparatus with an utterly vacant expression, an internal monologue probably suggesting he might have, just possibly, exceeded his 70% power estimate by a smidgen or two. The whole formidable device was utterly annihilated, smoldering and sputtering with scattered debris, a clear sign he was in for a world of hurt if anyone discovered his accidental remodeling of school equipment. Suddenly, the distant, irate shriek pierced the quiet, rumbling about the excessive ruckus, prompting Suhan to declare it a prime moment for swift evacuation. Hence he vanished from the arena faster than a free pizza at a student party. A cantankerous, mustard-half-wearing instructor stumbled upon the devastation, absolutely seething with indignation. He promptly pinned the blame on two mischievous scamps, Chen Shan and Lai Tu, convinced they were the sole culprits capable of such impressive mayhem. He bellowed into the nocturnal expanse, vowing to impart an unforgettable lesson upon those two rascals. Meanwhile, Suhan had already made his grand exit, his identity still a mystery, though his startling strength was now an undeniable, booming fact. Our story returns to Star City's esteemed number 1 high school, where the entire youthful populace was crammed into the gymnasium, an excited murmur filling the atmosphere as everyone speculated about the monumental declaration about to drop. Amidst the throng, whispers flew regarding Chen Shan's recent roughhousing, apparently having been framed for obliterating the combat test of the previous evening, and his stubborn refusal to confess earned him the principal's full, unadulterated wrath. Suhan hovered conveniently near the unfortunate scapegoat, sporting a flicker of remorse, yet predominantly relieved he wasn't currently in the hot seat, acknowledging that in this wild world, one must snatch victory wherever possible, even if it feels a tad unsporting. Principal Lai ascended the platform alongside a remarkably stern gentleman clad in an azure martial arts uniform, introducing his seasoned ally, Chen Tian, a highly distinguished Tier 3 combat expert, present to bestow a profound masterclass upon the eager students. The youthful audience was practically levitating with excitement, for encountering a Tier 3 professional in the flesh was an exceedingly uncommon occurrence. Typically, acquiring C-rank martial arts instruction at a private facility demanded exorbitant sums, rendering this a literal golden ticket for all. Chen Tian wasted no time, showcasing a technique dubbed the Thunder Rush Fist, causing Suhan's eyes to widen dramatically as he recognized it as the precise, catastrophic maneuver the White Fox had employed to almost end him back in the arena. Suhan clenched his hand, his internal system display flaring awake as he grasped the immense, game-changing prospect before him. Mere observation wasn't enough, he absolutely had to conquer the C-rank discipline to unlock his subsequent power tier. Chen Tian commanded the students to cease their incessant chattering and devote their utmost focus, as he intended to demonstrate the move a mere 10 times. He stood poised, his mere aura exerting a palpable, weighty influence over every soul in the chamber. He initiated his intricate footwork, propelling himself with a restrained yet potent energy that visibly rippled from the gymnasium's surface, distinct azure power beginning to spiral around his lower limbs as he gathered impetus for the impending assault. With an earth-shattering boom, he unleashed a punch that mimicked a bolt of pure lightning, his fist leaving a ghostly white energy trail. He clarified that even at its most fundamental stage, this intense fist momentum generated an authentic, booming sound. Chen Tian elaborated further, noting that achieving the proficient tier allowed for 3 distinct sounds, while the micro level generated 5. He was vividly illustrating the profound technical intricacies of a C-rank art, making everyone acutely aware of their arduous journey ahead. The seasoned master subsequently pushed his display to the absolute maximum, radiating an enormous sapphire glow as he unveiled the mastered domain. He unleashed 7 individual peals of thunder in one explosive instant, appearing nothing short of a deity of conflict on the platform. He informed the assembly that achieving 9 distinct sounds represented the ultimate, flawless domain, yet sagely advised them to temper their ambitions and simply strive for the fundamental stage today. Quite the sobering dose of reality for these spirited young scholars. The students immediately erupted into a chaotic flurry of activity, enthusiastically practicing the guttural vocalizations and earnestly attempting to embody the very essence of a spontaneous martial arts seminar. Flash forward many hours, and the entire gymnasium had transformed into a summer resting place for utterly spent adolescents. Most of them flopped upon the ground, panting like tired puppies and grumbling that C-rank techniques were simply an insurmountable chore to acquire. Suhan's spiky-coiffed companion was vibrating with utter exhaustion, thoroughly vanquished by the challenging intensity. He scanned the surroundings for Suhan, only to discover his elusive comrade had completely evaporated from the athletic hall. He surveyed the vacant spot where Suhan had previously been, utterly perplexed as to his friend's mysterious disappearance, unaware that Suhan was somewhere in the wild, diligently applying the freshly acquired wisdom. Suddenly, all eyes swiveled towards Chen Shan, who had remarkably managed to attain the foundational tier, the onlookers now hailing him as the school's unparalleled prodigy, and for a fleeting moment, he genuinely resembled the triumphant protagonist of this arc. Principal Lai was absolutely radiating with paternal pride, endeavoring to extol Chen Chan's virtues to the master instructor. Yet Chen Tan merely let out a dismissive snort, remarking that in more competitive urban centers, such genius amounted to merely scraping by. The two seasoned warriors ventured outside, engrossed in a discussion concerning the brutal realities of martial arts. Chen Tan expressed his profound disappointment, informing Lai that his current cohort of students was quite unremarkable, essentially rendering his visit a colossal waste of his valuable time. Principal Lai tries to argue for his students, but Chen Tan simply isn't listening. He's seen this level of talent countless times and knows that without a huge opportunity, most of these kids will never make it to the professional leagues. They work alone discussing the cruel reality of martial arts, where war ability is everything and hard work alone is just a hobby. Suddenly, a huge, thundering sound stops them in their treks. Both men whip around, their faces turning ghost white with alarm. That wasn't just a random noise, it was a sound they immediately recognized, coming straight from the training field. There stands Suhan, looking like a literal storm god wrapped in crackling blue electricity. He's unleashing a torrent of punches so incredibly fast and powerful that they're creating a sonic boom that shakes the entire area. He's moving with blur-like speed, his technique flawless and his energy completely out of control. Chen Tan can hardly believe his eyes. He only taught for half a day, and the student has already mastered the form. The master is actually trembling as he hides behind a fence, trying to count the punches. He lets out a scream, realizing he's looking at a natural-born monster, not just a talented kid. Chen Tan experiences a sudden flash of profound inspiration as he observes Suhan's perfect execution. His eyes light up and his face glows as he finally understands the missing piece necessary for his own technique. He clenches his fist, sparks of electricity jumping across his fingers as he channels everything he possesses. He shots Thunder Rush Fist and unleashes a punch fueled by this powerful new insight. With a huge bang, he releases a strike that completely blows away anything he demonstrated in the gym. He has finally overcome his personal limits, all thanks to accidentally watching a high school practice. He's absolutely ecstatic, screaming that Suhan's accidental inspiration cured his lifetime of creative stagnation. But when they excitedly run onto the field to thank the student, the place is completely empty. They search frantically, looking everywhere for the mysterious genius who just changed their lives. However, Suhan had already vanished, disappearing like a phantom into the city streets. Suhan is working through town, thinking that practicing C-rank skills is far more exhausting than his previous D-rank stuff. He keeps his head down low, trying to maintain a low profile after his powerful public display. He checks his system interface and sees that Thunder Rush Fist has successfully reached the perfect realm status. Now, he just needs to acquire additional martial points to finally push himself into the full martial artist classification. He arrives at his part-time job, the Raging Thunder Dojo, looking for a chance to fight. Basic practice is fine, but he knows he requires real combat to unlock the full potential of his system. He steps into the traditional-looking courtyard, ready to put in some hard work. It's quiet for now, but in a martial arts dojo, the peaceful atmosphere never lasts very long. Inside, students are training with spears, and the atmosphere feels charged. You can hear the sounds of wooden staves clashing and people grunting as they push their physical limits. A friendly student offers a greeting, but Suhan keeps it simple, stating he's just there to practice. He is focused on his goals, not here to socialize. He's here to increase his strength. Suddenly, a purple-haired jerk named Lai Yan kicks a fellow student right in the stomach, sending him flying across the room. He's an arrogant bull who clearly thinks he's superior to every other person in the room. He looks down with a sneer, mocking the other student for being a pathetic weakling and making flimsy excuses. This guy radiates bad vibes, and it's obvious he is looking for a confrontation. Suhan's acquaintance explains that Lai Yan and his instructor are new to the dojo and possess incredible strength, but they look down on everyone else. They treat the long-time members like absolute garbage. Lai Yan stands over the fallen student, challenging anyone else to step forward. He wears the infuriatingly confident look of someone certain they're unbeatable, while all the other students are too paralyzed by fear to move. He prepares to throw another punch at the kid on the floor, ready to cause some serious damage. He's totally out of line, showing zero concern for the dojo's regulations. But before the punch can connect, a hand shoots out and snatches Lai Yan's wrist with an iron grip. Suhan has stepped in, and the look on his face clearly states he's done watching this nonsense. Suhan tells him to stop right there in a cold, collected tone. He holds Lai Yan's arm completely still with ease, making the purple-haired guy start to realize he's taken the fight with the wrong person. Lai Yan becomes furious, screaming at Suhan to let go and meet him one-on-one in the sparring arena. Suhan just gives him a stone-cold stare and says he will gladly oblige. The rising tension is broken by a stern-looking man in a suit, likely the new instructor. He demands to know what all the commotion is about, informing everyone that class is officially beginning. Lai Yan walks away with a self-satisfied smirk, telling Suhan he's lucky that the instructor intervened. He genuinely believes he was about to win the fight, a conclusion that is honestly quite comical. Suhan simply watches him go, his blue eyes narrowed thoughtfully. He concludes internally that this person is far too arrogant, already formulating a strategy to thoroughly humiliate him later on. The instructor announces that today is the final lesson for the Regency Spear technique. Living up to his arrogant reputation, he states he will only perform it once, and they must learn it completely in a single viewing. He moves to the center of the room and commences the demonstration, wielding the spear with alarming velocity. He's clearly an expert, performing sharp, economical, and dangerous maneuvers. With a focused grunt, he whips the spear around until the wood howls, acting like a total peacock just to flaunt his skills before the day's students. Suhan watches with laser focus, his brain processing the physics like a hyperactive calculator, instantly downloading every trick directly into his internal database. The zoom-in shot of Suhan reveals the instructor's movements reflected in his iris, allowing him to perceive the hidden mastery that all the other dunces miss. The instructor slams the spear into the floor, grumbling that their progress is their own funeral, and saunters off with the charisma of a bored sloth. The students whine that one measly demo is a complete swindle, unable to grasp the technique and already throwing in the towel before they even start. Suhan enters his own zone, his eyes sparking as he unlocks the technique's secrets. Picking up a spear that suddenly flares with a gorgeous blue aura, he launches into a blur of motion, moving with such unnatural speed that trails of blue water energy follow, outclassing the instructor's original, plunky performance. He spins like a watery tornado, the spear strikes creating a solid wall of blue light that leaves the classmates staring in slack-jawed, baffled silence. Someone shrieks that Suhan actually nailed the move, while the entire gym watches, stunned as he treats this advanced training like a simple morning stretch. The crowd goes bananas, debating if they are total dunderheads or if Suhan is just a natural-born monster, likely causing the instructor a mild heart attack. Lai Yan stomps back inside, fuming at the commotion, but his chin almost hits the floor when he spots the kid actually mastering the spear technique. He saunters over with a greasy, predatory smirk, pretending he wants to offer tips just to find an excuse to bruise the rookie's fragile ego. He gives Suhan a nasty once-over, convinced he can easily crush the kid, totally ignoring the fact that he just watched him perform absolute magic. His friend begs him not to be a reckless idiot, but Suhan just shoots him a calm look, already sizing up his arrogant, glowing target. Suhan assumes a level, relaxed stance, inviting Lai Yan to share his wisdom, though his eyes suggest he is the one handing out a painful lesson. Lai Yan charges like a deranged bull draped in orange lightning, shrieking about arrogant brats while swinging a strike meant to carve the gym in half. Suhan just shuts his eyes to embrace the silence, totally unbothered by the incoming tantrum, standing like a statue while waiting to strike back. Suddenly, a massive blue dragon of liquid energy leaps from his spear, showcasing a proficiency level that makes Lai Yan's puny spark look like a campfire. Terror flickers across Lai Yan's face as he realizes he is horribly out of his depth, shrieking in confusion while the impending storm prepares to collide. Suhan drops the act, unleashing a surging tide of blue energy around his spear as he prepares to meet the charging full head-on. The weapons clash with a thunderous screech of metal, sending sparks flying as Suhan's sheer force shoves a high-rank bull backward like a toy. Lai Yan is losing his mind, struggling to comprehend how a non-warrior is crushing his orange sparks with such an advanced, high-level water technique. The chilling close-up highlights Suhan's eyes glowing with a golden light, his focus so terrifyingly sharp that the bull begins to quake in his boots. With one final, thunderous thrust, Suhan shatters the defense, proving once and for all that his talent sits on an entirely different planet. A system ping rewards Suhan with 35 martial points, making him realize that annoying bulls are basically just glorified ATMs for his leveling grind. Lai Yan kneels on the floor, staring at his trembling hands while blubbering about how it is physically impossible to master that spear move so fast. His embarrassment boils over into pure, unadulterated saltiness, and he glares at Suhan with eyes full of hate, unable to digest being humbled by a newbie. He lets out a shrill, hysterical yelp, questioning why his years of training matter if a random brat can beat him in a day, lunging for one last desperate hit. Enough, the instructor bellows, his voice cracking like a whip across the room, stopping the fight with a single blow that turns everyone into ice cubes. Lai Yan is forced to retreat, looking like a wet, pathetic puppy while facing his teacher, who stares at him with a cocktail of deep disappointment and fury. The instructor delivered a brutal reality check to Lai Yan, wondering aloud what sort of martial artist couldn't handle losing fairly. It was a humiliating public spectacle for the guy who had swaggered in like he owned the whole establishment just moments before. Lai Yan hung his head low in utter shame, his face twisted in a bitter grimace. He understood his standing in the dojo was completely annihilated following this one-sided, embarrassing thrashing. Internally, the instructor was absolutely floored, convinced that even the most promising prodigies from the Imperial City weren't this outrageously powerful. He concluded he was staring directly at a once-in-a-century phenomenon. He let out a weary sigh, acknowledging to himself that Lai Yan's talent was overshadowed by his pride, which guaranteed an eventual crash landing just like this. He looked at Suhan with fresh admiration, certain this young man was truly exceptional. The instructor genuinely bowed and offered a sincere apology to Suhan for his student's poor manners. What a complete reversal of fortune. This very same man had been judging everyone else just 60 minutes prior. Suhan simply offered a courteous nod, privately observing that this fellow certainly altered his perspective quickly. He wasn't interested in the theatrics, preferring instead to grab his rewards and make a swift exit. Pushing through the neon-drenched city streets on his way back, the day's fatigue finally started to catch up with Suhan, though a weary grin found its way onto his face. He was leaving with a couple of new abilities and a significant pile of system points. He accessed his status menu, feeling great relief as he gazed upon those 35 martial Tau points resting in his inventory. He was definitely inching closer to his objective, yet he understood he must continue striving hard to keep a step ahead of everyone else. The impending school examinations were causing him concern, particularly since all the wealthy students would be bringing high-quality alloy weaponry. He recognized that natural talent wasn't enough. He needed some truly exceptional equipment. He stretched out his hand, recalling how surprisingly natural the spear felt during the fight. He resolved to continue specializing in the spear from here on out, but he certainly needed an authentic weapon, not a flimsy training pole. Pausing at a store display window, his spirits deflated as he spotted the staggering price tag of $698,000 for a respectable alloy spear. Considering that cost on top of his aunt's medical expenses, he determined he needed to earn significant money immediately. An advertisement on a screen nearby grabbed his attention. The city was actively recruiting warriors willing to venture beyond the protected walls to hunt dangerous creatures. The compensation was substantial, which sounded perfect for his current situation. He debated whether he should truly step outside the city to hunt fierce beasts. Most apprentices wouldn't even consider such a dangerous undertaking, but Suhan had clearly outgrown the definition of a regular apprentice. Upon reaching his apartment complex, the routine view of clothes drying on the lines gave him a feeling of stability. This simple scene reminded him exactly why he was undertaking this difficult path, to safeguard this tiny portion of his life. Inside, he found his uncle looking battered and absolutely drained after another long shift of physical work. His aunt was tending to him carefully, and Suhan felt a pang of despair seeing them continue to battle financial hardship in this manner. He entered the living space, declaring his arrival. His family members' expressions instantly brightened, their personal anxieties fading away the second they caught sight of him. He instantly offered to assist his aunt with household tasks, but she insisted he should relax instead. He was weary of watching them exhaust themselves while he was out participating in fighting competitions. He sat beside his uncle, bluntly informing him that he was bringing in enough income for both of them to retire from working. He wanted them to simply remain home and concentrate entirely on their well-being. His uncle simply chuckled, giving him a quick thumbs up, trying hard to seem robust even though exhaustion lingered in his gaze. He pretended he was just making a little extra for everyday expenses, but Suhan understood the truth. His aunt offered him a warm, gentle smile, explaining that they were only trying to save as much as possible for his future development and training. Their complete lack of self-interest overwhelmed him emotionally. Suhan stared at his tablet screen, his decision already solidified in his mind. He recognized they would continuously make sacrifices for him unless he generated sufficient income to establish a genuine sense of safety for them. He determined he absolutely could not let this chance slip away, his days hardening as he focused on the bounty mission description. He was headed into the wildlands, regardless of whether it meant putting his life on the line. Before venturing out, he chose to invest every available point he possessed into his blood energy stat. If he planned to enter beast territory, he required his physical frame to be as resilient as he could possibly make it. The powerful crimson glow surrounded him as the points were assigned, causing his blood energy to instantly shoot up to 95. 2. He felt the immense power flowing through his veins, signifying he was merely one small step from becoming an authentic warrior. 2 days later, we discover him soak and sweat inside the vacant skull gymnasium late in the evening. He had honed every one of his existing abilities, ranging from Diamond Fist to Void Step, achieving the perfect mastery realm. He inhaled deeply one last time, with perspiration running down his face. He was as prepared as he possibly could be, and the moment had arrived for him to depart from the safety of Star City. He reached the Star City warrior base, a colossal stronghold positioned to protect the route leading into the wilderness. The sheer size of the complex was astonishing, resembling a futuristic fortress constructed specifically for military conflict. Suhan stepped through the entrance, experiencing for the first time in ages the sensation of being a tiny guppy in an ocean full of sharks. He had viewed this location countless times on television, but experiencing it live felt entirely different. The base was teeming with seasoned warriors, individuals who earned a livelihood battling creatures for cash. It was a rugged, serious collection of people, and Suhan's clean skull jacket made him look completely out of place. He examined the bounty board, noting the varied prices offered for different levels of beasts. To receive payment, he needed to slice off the left ear of every creature he killed. It was basic, yet it remained the only reliable method for verifying a successful hunt. He lets out a crooked chuckle, noting this place feels incredibly basic. It's a stark, dark welcome to his new reality, but he certainly doesn't have the time to be picky about the scenery. He approaches the storefront, instructing the clerk to tabulate the potential value of a complete bounty. He's already counting his profits before he even begins hunting in the woods. Without warning, a shadow moon wolf bursts from the foliage, its claws extended and prepared to shred Suhan. Its eyes blaze with pure madness as it hurtles through the atmosphere for the fatal blow. However, Suhan has long since graduated from the amateur ranks. He fluidly dodges the wolf's assault, allowing the creature to faceplant pointlessly into the ground just past him. He instantly charges a huge amount of golden energy into his clenched fist. This isn't merely a simple jab, it's brimming with sufficient force to conclude this encounter immediately. He lands a savage hit directly on the wolf's side. The force of the blow is so intense, it cracks the earth below as the accumulated power bursts outward. The creature is sent flying through the open space, issuing one final, mournful cry. It never possessed a prayer of victory against such overwhelming power. Suhan surveys the fallen beast. Seemingly amazed by his own rapid development, he murmurs that confronting monsters is exactly like this, surpassing all expectations for excitement. He tightens his grip, still feeling the adrenaline of combat flowing through his system. He's beginning to acquire a genuine fondness for this dangerous, high-risk existence. He considers that he can now eliminate a Tier 1 initial stage monster in just one maneuver. His gaze ignites with fresh purpose as he contemplates his chances against a Tier 1 intermediate stage foe. Careful what you hope for, pal. A huge, enraged black bear looms behind him, its vision blazing with a fiery red, radiating pure evil intent. Suhan remains completely unfazed, confronting the creature directly with yet another powerful blow. The resultant burst of light is so brilliant it temporarily obscures the entire surrounding woodland. The bear's skull snaps backward from the momentum of the impact. It's a direct connection that would have reduced an average human being to mincemeat. The giant creature collapses in a heap. Suhan calmly acknowledges that as long as he avoids those pesky Tier 2 beasts, he's practically running the show in this wilderness. Time for a little remuneration. He extracts a trophy from the bear, instantly calculating his impending financial gain. He reassures himself that $3,000 in reward money has already been guaranteed. Abruptly, the system emits a huge notification sound. He has finally accumulated enough fighting experience to advance and formally gain the title of martial artist, a breakthrough he has long anticipated. However, the party is quickly postponed by a spine-tingling bellow that reverberates throughout the entire forest. Even Suhan appears slightly unnerved by the immense force contained within the noise. He turns his attention to the source of the noise, detecting an energy signature far exceeding anything he has encountered previously. He speculates about the nature of the beast capable of producing such a powerful sound. He wastes absolutely no time, propelling himself through the branches toward where the roar originated. He determines to investigate, always eager to confront the subsequent obstacle. He arrives at the precipice of a stone ledge and stares into the case beneath him. His eyes widen significantly as he comprehends the scene he has accidentally discovered. Below sits a monstrous black jade python, a Tier 1 late-stage creature. It's presently under assault by a team of hunters who seem thoroughly unprepared for the encounter. The python's enormous head brutally strikes one of the hunters. The man releases a shriek of intense pain as the immense tower behind the blow completely overwhelms his defenses. The hunter is launched through the atmosphere like a discarded toy. Suhan observes from his vantage point, his face shining with desperation as he comprehends the true peril posed by this monster. The python releases another terrifying bellow, its gaze fixed on the surviving targets. It appears utterly invulnerable, like an animated fortress of scales. A different hunter struggles to keep himself aloft as the snake's huge frame rapidly swings around. These poor individuals are being methodically torn apart. That's incredibly quick, Suhan reflects, his eyes struggling to follow the python's next strike. It possesses a velocity that contradicts its enormous proportions. The python's skull thrusts forward once more, resembling a fuzzy streak of scales and teeth. It's essentially a bullet train crafted from solid muscle tissue. Its enormous tail slams into the earth, generating an actual crater in the rock. The resulting force wave alone is sufficient to knock the nearby hunters off their feet. A sickening splash of blood appears on the stones as someone hacks up vital organs. This isn't truly combat, it's a complete slaughter. Suhan jumps from the ledge to assess the injured hunters. He discovers one individual lying in a crimson puddle, appearing as though he's already halfway to the afterlife. Suhan dabbed the crimson smear from his lip, his expression turning stormy. He simply refused to sit idly by while a monster turned bystanders into snacks. He snatched a discarded spear from the dirt, securing a firm grip on the handle. He silently apologized to the unconscious former owner for the temporary theft, locking his gaze on the enormous serpent. Suhan faced off against the enormous python, appearing positively minuscule next to the beast. Yet, his posture was unyielding, ready to give this oversized reptile a demonstration of his capabilities. The python let out a tremendous roar and plunged down, intending to consume him in a single bite. Its immense, gaping maw resembled a horrifying cavern of fangs and shatters. Suhan effortlessly sidestepped the lunge, allowing the snake's massive head to collide with the very spot he'd occupied moments before. While most Tier 1 beasts require a squad to handle, he considered himself slightly above average. He utilized the python's enormous form as an improvised ramp, sprinting up its armored spine with remarkable agility. This was shaping up to be a poor tactical decision on the serpent's part. He moved like a sudden streak of light, his feet practically gliding over the large scales. He internally confirmed that his current level gave him the strength necessary to challenge this massive black jade python. He launched himself off the beast, spear positioned perfectly for a fatal strike. His void step technique was flawless, enabling him to essentially flow through the atmosphere like a spirit. He invoked the raging sea spear technique at its pinnacle, causing the weapon to become shrouded in spiraling blue energy. He was committing absolutely every ounce of his power to the single thrust. The spear collided with the python's armor, creating an enormous metallic sound. The point didn't penetrate immediately, but the resulting shockwave vibrated violently throughout the creature's massive form. The python let out an infuriated bellow, its pupils shifting to a more intense shade of crimson. It had finally encountered an opponent capable of inflicting genuine damage. Suhan kicked off the python's thick flank, performing a graceful backflip to widen the gap. He understood that excessive ambition was a luxury he couldn't afford against such an enormous creature. He landed effortlessly and secured his grasp on the spear once more, watching his knuckles widen under the strain. He was simply warming up for the main event. He slid backward through the dirt, a faint blue energy sparking around his lower legs. He immediately began calculating his next move, scanning for any gaps in the python's colossal defenses. He resumed his fighting pose, his eyes shining with focused resolve. He let out a determined grunt, announcing he would attack once more as his body hummed with potential. He charged once more, the spear transforming into a streak of blue luminescence as he stabbed forward with tremendous strength. This time, he was specifically targeting the vulnerable areas between the scales. The python barely managed to retract its head, the spear leaving a shallow cut on its neck. It was slowly dawning on the beast that it couldn't overpower this diminutive human through sheer size alone. It became a rapid exchange of offense and defense as the serpent's body thrashed like a colossal flail. Suhan navigated the onslaught with such elegance it resembled a pre-rehearsed dance routine. He adopted a low posture as the dust began to settle around them. He recognized the size disparity was simply too vast to inflict a decisive, single blow against the creature. A sudden, colossal tail swipe whizzed directly over his head. If he hadn't instantaneously dropped at the precise second, he would be reduced to a completely flat, non-martial artist shape. Suhan activated his Thunder Rush fist technique at the highest level. He delivered a tremendous electrical punch that connected with the snake's body, striking with the intensity of a natural lightning strike. He landed the strike and instantly sprang backward, increasing the separation before the python could respond. He was employing clever head-and-drawn maneuvers to gradually diminish the creature's stamina. He stood firm, spear poised for action. He inwardly reiterated his plan, identify a weakness, execute the next strike, and then rapidly retreat to safety, maintaining the strict methodology. He was breathing heavily, a slight exhaustion beginning to creep in. He mused that the style of combat was certainly draining, yet it provided a safe opportunity to catch his breath before the final push. The python was visibly trembling, its massive head beginning to droop toward the dirt. Suhan noticed it was rapidly approaching its breaking point and estimated only a few more maneuvers were required to end the fight. He prepared his spear for the last time, his gaze fixed firmly on the target. He shouted a challenge for the python to continue, completely ready to conclude this fight immediately. Hold on a second, someone else was approaching. Suhan rapidly spun around, his danger sense practically vibrating. He let out a low growl, demanding to know who was there as he felt the new presence. A cold, unsettling laugh echoed throughout the rocky clearing. Someone had been lurking unseen in the shadows, waiting for the precise moment to make a move. A towering figure wearing a black mask dropped from the high rocks, his fist wreathed in burning red energy. This particular individual screamed bad intentions from every fiber of his being. Suhan only just managed to raise his arms in defense as a burning fist connected with him. The raw intensity of the blow struck him completely by surprise. Our hero was sent flying across the rocky terrain, making an ungraceful landing in the dust with a resounding thump. He certainly hadn't planned on being ambushed by a human being. He expected to face monsters, not fellow competitors. He remained down for a beat, hacking up a mouthful of earth and clutching his aching side. That impact had clearly done more than just scratch the pain. He glanced upward to find a pack of opportunistic hunters looming above him, spearheaded by that irritating blonde pretty boy from the guild. Suhan, his temper rising, bellowed out a challenge, wanting to know exactly who these pests thought they were. The blonde fellow flashed a grin so smug it practically invited violence, remarking that they'd crossed paths again and suggesting Suhan hand over the giant black jade python. He was already celebrating his victory before the fight even started, which was quite the rookie error. The stage was set for a truly unfair fight, as Suhan realized he was completely encircled by Yifeng and his quartet of hired muscle. Our hero was already beat up from battling the massive snake, making these opportunists feel like vultures swooping in on carrion. Yifeng stared down at the injured student with a disgustingly satisfied grin. He wore that privileged, entitled expression like a uniform, clearly reveling in catching his nemesis at rock bottom. He jabbed a derisive finger toward the huge snake carcass, declaring that Suhan's fortune had simply run out by finding it nearly dead. He was openly planning to steal both the glory and the valuable resources. Suhan realized these guys hadn't actually hunted down the creature. They had just stumbled across him and were attempting to swoop in for an opportunistic, risk-free profit. Our hero was clearly in a difficult predicament, carefully assessing the 5 martial artists blocking his exit. He knew that in his current state, trying to fight all of them at once was essentially signing a life insurance policy and handing it to them. A truly enormous henchman wearing a bright red mask lumbered forward, resembling a video game's final boss. He snarled at Suhan, telling him to leave immediately unless he wanted to be flattened like a pancake. Suhan slowly wiped the streak of blood from his jaw, his eyes hardening significantly. He absolutely refused to retreat from a confrontation, especially when these vultures were trying to steal his hard-won prize. He snarled, pointing out that the previous success was only due to a cowardly sneak attack, as crimson electrical sparks began to dance around his clenched fist. He was determined to prove that even a wounded dragon still breathes fire. With a thunderous explosion, Suhan charged ahead, delivering an explosive punch that the large masked man barely managed to intercept. The resulting shockwave from the impact was so powerful it literally blew the dust away from the surrounding ground. The large dune staggered backward, his eyes widening in alarm behind his mask as he truly felt the terrifying force of Suhan's attack. He had expected an easy win, but instead, he'd just run headfirst into a concrete wall. Suhan didn't allow him a moment to breathe, unleashing a high-speed barrage of strikes. He moved with such incredible velocity that the bulky thug seemed to be operating in a completely different time zone. Yifeng and the remaining crew watched from a safe distance as Suhan methodically took apart the strongest fighter. The tables were turning, and they were spinning faster than anyone could keep track. A sudden look of recognition crossed Yifeng's face as he identified the specific technique. He immediately knew it was a renowned Vajra fist, which meant he was staring directly at the Minotaur. The carefully protected secret identity had just been completely blown. A brief mental movie replayed the last encounter between these two, back when Suhan wore the bull mask while dominating the underground fighting circuit. It turns out the world isn't as big as they thought. Yifeng's previous arrogance vanished instantly, replaced by an expression of intense, boiling hatred. He hadn't forgotten the deep embarrassment of being defeated in public, and he was absolutely ready to settle this score once and for all. He shrieked for the others to kill him, and the entire group instantly rushed forward like a horde of very angry hyenas. It was 4 against 1 now, and the forest was rapidly becoming a very unpleasant place to be. Suhan wasn't about to be outsmarted. He immediately tossed his spear as a diversion and sprinted deep into the dense tree line. He recognized he couldn't possibly win in an open area, so he was moving the battlefield to his advantage. The thugs lost sight of him completely within the thick underbrush, as a leader carrying the huge sword yelled a warning to remain vigilant. The woods were ideal for a sudden ambush, and Suhan had suddenly become the one hunting. One of the henchmen went on high alert, frantically scanning the shadows for any flicker of motion. He was sweating profusely beneath his mask, knowing Suhan could be literally anywhere, waiting for the perfect moment. Without warning, a flash of blue energy shot through the dense brush. Suhan struck violently from the concealment of the shadows, delivering a crippling punch that sent yet another thug flying through the thick foliage. A dramatic close-up revealed Suhan's eye glowing with an intense blue light. He was perfectly concentrated, his flawless techniques allowing him to move like a literal apparition in the forest. Another loud thud resonated through the trees as Suhan eliminated yet another target. He was systematically picking off the group members, successfully turning the hunters into the prey. One of the remaining thugs lay crumpled in the dirt, spitting up blood and looking as though he'd just seen a terrifying phantom. Suhan was not messing around. This fight was all about survival. Yifeng began to panic, looking frantically around as he watched his entire team get systematically removed from the fight. He gasped, wondering how this opponent moved so quickly, watching his confidence rapidly evaporate. The final remaining lackey began to tremble as he recognized the distinct sound of the 9-echo thunderclap fist technique. Even very experienced martial artists usually struggle to achieve this level of mastery, and the realization was terrifying him completely. Yifeng roared at the lackey to silence him, though his own face was completely white with fear. The full understanding that he was facing a perfection-level master was finally setting in, presenting a truly horrifying prospect. Suhan, perched on a branch, caught his breath like a rusty accordion. He knew victory was assured, but that brawl with the oversized snake earlier had really drained his batteries, leaving him running on fumes. He didn't bother waiting for his lungs to catch up, instead plummeting from the tree with his spear pointed straight at another unfortunate henchman. Time was money, and he was quickly approaching empty. The impact was a brutal slam into the dirt, releasing a blue energy shockwave that flattened all the nearby grass. It was the definition of an ambush, leaving the poor goons with nowhere to run. He clamped down on one poor fellow's neck, his gaze glowing with the intensity of a cold blue LED. This was a moment all those grueling training sessions finally paid dividends, transforming a sticky situation into a truly unfortunate Tuesday for the opposition. With a bone-shattering stomp, he introduced the guy's face to the ground at high speed. Another one bites the dust, and the odds were finally starting to favor the protagonist, which is generally how these things work. A crimson mist blossomed across the leaves as Suhan landed yet another fatal blow. He was moving with a kind of brutal efficiency usually reserved for professional assassins and very angry toddlers. The remaining henchmen were starting to sweat a lot, and one poor soul was already yelling for a full-scale retreat, thoroughly spooked by the nightmare they had stumbled upon. Yifeng, however, shouted back in disbelief, his stubborn pride refusing to let him admit defeat. Another henchman went flying through the air, resembling a discarded action figure with a loose joint. Suhan was a tornado of violence, leaving behind only shattered hopes and, well, shattered buddies. Yifeng stood frozen, gazing at the wreckage of his squad as Suhan strolled casually out of the dust cloud. The young master was finally having an extremely uncomfortable reunion with the guy he falsely tried to mug. He lunged at Suhan with a pathetic roar, his face contorted in a mask of pure, unadulterated desperation. It was a moment of truth, the climax of a bad decision that had been brewing since the first very rude introduction. Yifeng started to tremble uncontrollably, genuinely shocked that Suhan could have leveled up so drastically in just a few short days. He was now sweating profusely in his fancy gear, realizing the full weight of his impending loss. Suhan didn't waste his breath, simply leaning back with effortless grace to avoid a frantic swing. He had transcended the need for conversation, deciding that only results truly mattered. Suhan slid backward, his gaze locked firmly on Yifeng's every motion. He thought to himself that it was finally time to settle accounts, preparing to cash in on all the frustration Yifeng had caused him. Yifeng let loose with a desperate blast of cerulean energy from his hand, his face twisted in a silent scream. He was emptying the tank completely, putting every last bit of power into this final, Hail Mary attack. But Suhan was already moving to counter, his aura erupting in a chaotic blend of red and blue light. He was channeling something called Void Shatter, and it looked like a real bad idea for Yifeng. The raw energy began to focus rapidly at the point of his spear, crackling with dangerous, unstable power. This was clearly the grand achievement skill level, and the surrounding atmosphere actually started to hum under the strain. With a massive thunderclap, a huge pillar of blue light tore through the woods, effortlessly leveling trees and leaving a trail of neatly glassified soil behind it. It was truly a masterful display of overwhelming firepower. A massive oak tree was snapped like a pretzel stick by the resulting shockwave. The force behind this particular void-shattering finger was truly in a league of its own, far surpassing anything encountered before. Hold on, that wasn't Suhan, it was Yifeng. He was actually using a fancy high-level B-class skill that projected a spiderweb of lethal blue energy beams across the entire clearing. The glowing beams crisscrossed the entire area, forming a giant, deadly laser grid. Suhan was definitely sweating now, realizing he may have underestimated the brat's hidden arsenal of dirty tricks. He scanned the glowing web, his brain working overtime to spot a weakness. A B-class skill was certainly not something to laugh at, and making one wrong move would definitely cost him more than just bragging rights. Yifeng was panting heavily, a deranged expression on his face as he screamed about hunting down and eliminating Suhan's entire family once he returned home. That, dear Rita, was a massive tactical error, because you simply do not mess with the main character's family tree. Suhan's expression went completely and utterly dark. One of his eyes suddenly flared with a very menacing blue light. The atmosphere around him began to literally hum with a tangible, intense killing intent so thick you could almost taste it. He instantly blitzed toward Yifeng with such velocity that he transformed into nothing more than a black streak. The blue energy web didn't even register, because he was now moving for the express purpose of ending this. Yifeng started stammering desperately, trying to hide behind the influence of his family name. He babbled about his powerful uncle the supervisor and his father, but Suhan had completely tuned him out at this point. He materialized directly behind Yifeng in an instant, cloaked in a fearsome red and blue aura. He leaned in close to whisper that he much preferred it when Yifeng was acting tough just a few moments ago. Suhan grabbed him by the hair, his face as cold and hard as a glacier in winter. The negotiation period had officially expired. With a massive thunderclap, he slammed a brutal fist straight into Yifeng's face, rearranging his nose and several of his teeth in one devastating blow. That, my friend, was the direct result of threatening the protagonist's family. He finishes strong with a spinning back kick that slams the kid right below the jawline. The noise it made was less pop and more car crash, enough to make onlookers cringe. Yifeng launched through the air, sailing toward the ceiling as if he'd just been T-boned by a semi. He smashed into a rock pile with such force that it created a dust cloud large enough to rival the Sahara. He lay crumpled in the dirt, gasping for air and desperately trying not to pass out. Yifeng was completely shattered, figuring out much too late that Suhan was, without a doubt, a fully qualified martial arts expert. Suhan stood over his defeated opponent, enveloped in a frightening red aura, looking like a demonic barbecue. He snarled that Yifeng absolutely shouldn't have threatened his family, his tone dripping with genuine malice. Yifeng could barely manage to speak, spitting up a mouthful of blood as he stared at Suhan in absolute terror. He was convinced he wasn't looking at a person, but an actual monster. Suddenly, a colossal shadow completely engulfed both fighters. Suhan glanced upward and instantly recognized the black jade giant python, which had clearly finished its nap and was ready for a rematch. Yifeng stared up at the skyscraper-sized serpent with eyes practically popping out of his skull. The situation was a textbook definition of going from a bad day to a complete catastrophe. The python's gigantic tail descended like a collapsing skyscraper. Suhan barely managed to dive for safety, just as the strike flattened the entire clearing around them. Suhan stood his ground with spear poised, visibly annoyed. He realized he had wasted too much time playing with these small-time bulls, and now the genuine danger was back and even more powerful than before. Yifeng's lackeys were checking the forest, wondering if the boss had managed to kill the kid. They had absolutely no clue that they were next on the chopping block. One of the henchmen noticed some motion in the undergrowth. His eyes nearly popped out as he realized Suhan wasn't only alive, but charging straight at them. Suhan exploded from the bushes like a rocket on a trajectory. The goons were completely stunned, screaming at him to turn around, but our hero had a far more brilliant plan than simply running away. Big mistake indeed. Suhan wasn't just attacking them, he was luring the colossal python directly to the location. The look on their faces when that enormous head emerged right behind him was absolutely priceless. The python lunged forward, and Suhan vaulted over the resulting chaos. The beast instantly snatched one of the thugs, and a system notification flashed on Suhan's screen, indirectly eliminated an opponent martial artist, gaining 30 martial value. Now that's what you call a high IQ play. Suhan quickly understood he could earn martial value simply by allowing the snake to do all the heavy lifting. He watched another dune dick casually swatted away like an annoying housefly. The python's tail whipped through the air at incredible speed, but Suhan evaded it with split-second accuracy. He was completely focused, engaging in a fierce staring contest with the creature using his glowing blue eyes. He launched himself into the sky, whirling just past another close hit. The system made another ping sound, signaling that he had finally gathered enough martial value to level up and become a genuine martial arts master. He noticed a nearby cave entrance and sprinted toward it, abandoning the python and the remaining thugs in his wake. He desperately needed a safe, quiet place to complete his breakthrough before the giant snake caught up to him. Suhan dove headfirst into the pitch-black opening of the cave. It wasn't exactly a 5-star hotel, but it was the only shelter available in this crazy, monster-filled forest. The python wasn't about to give up that easily. Its enormous tail slammed directly above the opening, causing the entire mountainside to shudder violently. The force of the strike initiated a massive rock slide, completely covering the entrance in a haze of dirt and rock fragments. Suhan was trapped inside, which was actually a relief, since the snake couldn't immediately reach him. Deep within the completely dark cave, Suhan recovered his breathing while the python outside roared in utter frustration. He knew he was on a tight deadline. It was time to either improve rapidly or simply perish. The serpent tried to force its head into the small space, hissing with pure, unfiltered hatred. It was a scene straight out of a horror movie, yet Suhan was totally preoccupied staring at a digital upgrade menu. He opened his system interface, checking his martial value which was currently sitting at a satisfying 504 points. He calculated quickly, realizing he needed to pour every point he had into vitality just to survive this next evolution. He focused hard, repeatedly smashing the upgrade button like a desperate gamer trying to beat a level. The system notifications were flashing rapidly as his physical statistics began to rise dramatically. His physical form began to emit a powerful, molten red radiance. He groaned loudly in pain, feeling as if his very blood had transformed into liquid hot magma. It was easily the most excruciating physical transformation he had ever experienced. The system display finally showed a brilliant red number, vitality 100. He had reached the maximum level, and the true, final transformation was just getting started. The python's glowing eye peered into the cave just as the breakthrough notification appeared on Suhan's screen. He is now officially a tier 1 martial artist. The snake had truly chosen the worst moment in history to drop by. Suhan rose to his feet, surrounded by a huge, swirling aura of orange and red flames. He looked absolutely incredible, giving off so much energy that the atmosphere around him visibly shook. He clenched his fist, and sparks flew as his new energy settled into place. He quietly stated that it was now time for his turn. The python actually hesitated and began to pull back, instantly realizing it had made a terrible mistake. The giant python's face was frozen in terror, realizing the small human it was hunting had suddenly become a considerably larger and more lethal predator, while Suhan just stood there, exuding pure menace. He launched himself forward, his fist radiating a brilliant white glow. This wasn't just a simple attack, it was a sudden eruption, unleashing every ounce of pent-up breakthrough energy he possessed in one devastating blow. With a massive concussive impact, he connected a heavy strike right against the python's heavily armored side, hitting with such force that the enormous creature actually lifted completely off the ground. The python let out a final, agonizing shriek, quickly realizing that its powerful status as a tier 1 beast was now a complete joke in the face of Suhan's power. The close-up shot of the snake's face showed it battered and bleeding, its eyes dimming as the self-appointed king of the forest finally met his definitive end. Suhan wasn't finished yet, leaping high into the air and charging up his badger fist for an encore. He glowed with a golden light, resembling a martial arts deity descending to deliver a final judgment. He hovered briefly above the massive serpent, a minuscule figure contrasting sharply against the backdrop of enormous scales, truly highlighting the ridiculous scale of this confrontation. He slammed his fist down with enough force to generate a massive red shockwave that annihilated surrounding trees and dispersed all dust in the area, a truly definitive demonstration of a martial artist's power. The battle was officially over. Suhan calmly wiped a tiny bead of sweat from his chin before grabbing hold of the snake's tail, looking completely composed after essentially detonating a small tactical nuke in the woods. He roared as he swung the entire, colossal mass of the python and viciously slammed it into the rocky ground, showcasing a level of brute physical strength that was truly unbelievable. The enormous beast collided with the ground in a deafening crash, kicking up a dust cloud that blanketed the entire clearing. The match was officially called a clean knockout. Suhan, ever the perfectionist, decided to add one last dramatic flourish. He charged up a thunderous fist, electrical arcs crackling between his fingers as he prepared the final, decisive blow. He punched the ground, causing a colossal pillar of lightning energy to erupt, completely incinerating whatever minuscule will to fight remained in the python. The resulting roar of thunder echoed for several miles. From a top-down perspective, the blast radius was staggering, making it appear as if a powerful explosive device had detonated in the center of the woods. The dust eventually cleared, leaving Suhan standing in the middle of a completely scorched battlefield. The forest was silent again, and our protagonist was now officially the undisputed strongest entity for a considerable distance. He stood proudly atop the dead python, checking his system notifications, which confirmed his martial value had increased by a whopping 921 points, a truly impressive payday for a day's work. Sitting down on the snake's head, he pondered the bounty, realizing he had a problem because snakes lacked ears, and in this strange world, no ears meant no payment. This was, he concluded, a rather strange and inconvenient problem to have. A wide-angle view of the clearing emphasized the total devastation, making Suhan look like a tiny speck next to the enormous carcass of the creature he had defeated. He retrieved his spear and started working away. He had acquired everything he came for, and it was time to head back to the safety of the base before things got even more bizarre. He paused briefly by Yifin's broken body, looking down without an ounce of pity. He decided that ending up like this was actually getting off easy for Yifeng, a cold assessment considering Yifeng himself was a complete snake. He began to search the body, hoping to find the high-level technique the young brat had been using. After all, if you're going to act like a villain, you should at least have the decency to leave behind some decent loot for the hero. Jackpot. He discovered a manual titled Void-Breaking Finger, which looked ancient and exceptionally powerful, exactly the B-rank upgrade he needed to advance his skills to the next level. Night descended upon the forest, leaving the massive python's body as just a dark silhouette under the moonlight. The silence returned, but Suhan's real adventure was just beginning to intensify. Inside a small cave, Suhan had built a small fire. He had already committed the entire void-breaking finger cultivation manual to memory, which was a pretty significant accomplishment. He resolved to use his system to master it quickly, adopting a meditative posture. He wasn't going to waste even a second of this valuable training time. He entered the digital training realm and faced his blue energy doppelganger. He challenged it to attack, fully ready to push his physical limits once again. The clone lunged forward with a strike that appeared to tear through the air itself. Su-han barely dodged, instantly recognizing that this B-rank skill operated on a completely different level of difficulty. The training session was incredibly intense, forcing Su-han to dodge rapid beams of light while simultaneously attempting his own strikes. Digital status bars constantly popped up as he slowly worked toward achieving the basic mastery level. The close-up of the clone's focused eye displayed a status bar reading void-breaking finger, basic 1%, confirming that progress was agonizingly slow, but still moving forward. Su-han reappeared in the real cave, immediately coughing up a small amount of blood. He realized that, as expected from a B-rank martial skill, just achieving the basic realm put this much pressure on him. This technique was no joke. After 3 days, he heads back into the forest and runs straight into a massive grizzly bear looking for a fight, providing perfect timing for a field test. He unleashes his void-breaking finger, creating a ridiculous impact. A colossal pillar of azure light strikes the bear, resembling an orbital laser strike from a science fiction film. The bear is instantly vaporized, and Su-han stands tall with a glowing blue fingertip. He concludes that he has achieved the pinnacle of perfection, making the B-rank skill truly worthy of its status, essentially becoming laughably overpowered. He makes his way back to the martial artist headquarters, a chaotic hub of hunters. Everyone else looks like they survived a tornado, but Su-han appears like he just had a leisurely bubble bath. The crowd is astonished by another team's haul worth 230,000 coins, which is considered an enormous sum for most squads. Everyone crowds around to examine the pile of beast remnants. The different group shows off their initial tier 1 kills, feeling quite pleased with themselves. They have absolutely no idea what kind of treasure Su-han is carrying in his inconspicuous bag. Su-han casually drops his enormous loot bag on the counter, causing the Clark's jaw to hit the floor. The contents include 72 initial stage, 83 middle stage, and 17 high stage monsters, tallying a shocking 406,000 blue star coins. Su-han realizes he might have overdone it as the entire lobby falls silent, staring fixedly at him. He thinks he perhaps killed far too many beasts, making himself conspicuously obvious. No kidding, genius. A massive red energy shockwave suddenly appears above the main building. Something serious is clearly happening, and the mood at the base shifts from stunned silence to panicked fear. The crowd inside descends into chaos, having heard rumors that the base itself was attacked. Everyone shouts over each other, trying to guess what kind of force could possibly take down a place full of skilled martial artists. Supervisor Yi-fun's uncle, storms out looking furious enough to commit violence. He orders his men to seal off the entire facility, forbidding anyone from leaving until he gets satisfactory answers. Another official inquires what happened, and Supervisor Yi drops a devastating truth. His nephew Yi-fun and the 4 martial artists with him are all dead. He is absolutely incandescent with rage. The close-up reveals his expression of pure, uncontrollable fury. He desires more than just the killer. He wants to annihilate everyone who dared to interfere with his family. Su-han is nestled in the crowd, trying his best to look surprised. The other hunters whisper that Yi-fun's entire team was wiped out, and the news spreads like wildfire throughout the building. The ordinary hunters are actually celebrating the event. They murmur that Yi-fun was a scourge who routinely stole from everyone. One individual openly calls it a good killing, a sentiment shared by many others. Supervisor Yi works through the masses with a sinister look, informing his men that a B-rank training manual is missing from the body. He then orders a full body search for everyone present at the base. Su-han stays calm as he works past the security personnel. He remains confident that staging the bodies to look like a python attack will keep any suspicion away from him. He glares back at the enraged supervisor with a defiant smirk. He holds both the manual and the money, absolutely refusing to let this man take either from him. He wonders if they might be targeting him specifically as the guards begin eyeing him. After all, he just turned in a 400,000 credit haul, effectively painting a bullseye on his back. The crowd quickly parts as Supervisor Yi and his thugs march directly towards Su-han. The scene resembles a classic high noon duel, strangely transplanted into a futuristic high-tech fortress. Supervisor Yi refuses to believe it, claiming Su-han looks like a rank 1 weakling at best. He insists our hero just scavenged his nephew's equipment and commands his goons to immediately search him. The thugs approach with their fists literally on fire, warning Su-han not to resist unless he wants to make things messy. Su-han simply holds his ground, calm as ice, with his spear ready. This turns out to be a massive blunder. In the literal blink of an eye, Su-han's spear tip rests mere inches from a thug's face. The guy didn't even see him move, the sunglasses nearly falling from his head in shock. Su-han now holds all 3 aggressors at spear point, his weapon aimed directly at their throats. The henchmen are completely frozen, realizing this kid possesses speed far beyond their ability to track. Su-han nonchalantly announces that he attends Star City High number 1, asking if they genuinely wish to cross that line. He projects an intimidating aura that immediately causes the thugs to start sweating nervously. Supervisor Yi rapidly performs some mental math, knowing the principal of that specific high school is a bureaucratic nightmare to deal with. He begins to suspect that if Su-han really hunted all those beasts alone, he isn't just a student, but rather a terrifying prodigy. He quickly changes his tune, deciding that offending the school is definitely not worth the resulting trouble. He requests cooperation rather than forcing a search, attempting to look relaxed as his henchmen retract their weapons. He explains that his nephew was attacked and a secret family skill was stolen. He is frantic to locate the perpetrator, and currently, Su-han remains the only person nearby who matches the suspect profile. Su-han glares right back, cautioning Yi that he had better avoid falsely accusing him. The surrounding tension is so palpable you could slice it with a dull butter knife as they engage in a silent battle of wills. Supervisor Yi attempts to bribe him, offering 10,000 credits simply for allowing the search. He is essentially trying to purchase his escape from this increasingly uncomfortable predicament. Suhan didn't skip a beat, immediately upping the ante to 30,000 credits. He could smell his panic from a mile away, and he wasn't about to let this golden opportunity slip through his fingers. The dudes rifled through Suhan's belongings and gave him a thorough pat down, only to find absolutely zip, nada. One confirmed the lack of goods, much to his visible, teeth-grinding annoyance. He was left with zero options but to fork over the cash, instructing his crew to hand over the 30,000 credits and release the cunning trickster. He was clearly ticked off, knowing full well he had just been thoroughly bamboozled. A quick flashback reveals Suhan setting fire to that B-rank training guide out in the woods beforehand. He's playing the line game, committing the techniques to memory, incinerating the evidence, and ensuring the authorities find nothing. Suhan strolled off with a much heavier wallet, abandoning the annoyed hunters to the complaints. He was on his way to the Martial Artist Association to get officially tested and see exactly how formidable he had become. That evening, Suhan was relaxing in a fancy hotel room near the base. It was a huge step up from his tiny apartment, offering the perfect quiet moment to review his recent progress, the access to system interface, and was stunned to discover he had accumulated 534 martial DA points. He'd been so preoccupied with staying alive that he hadn't fully processed just how much experience he'd reaped from slaying those monsters. Studying the progression chart, he noted that rank 1 Earl stage requires 100 vitality, while the mid-stage jumps to 200. He calculated that he possessed enough points to almost reach that next level in one massive leap. He noticed his spirit and mortal frame attributes were still at their base values. Curious about the function, he decided to start playing around with his huge pile of leftover points to see what happened. He allocated a few points to spirit, but frankly, nothing seemed to change. No dramatic explosions, no mystical glow in his eyes, just a digit increasing on the display. Next, he tried mortal frame, and holy cow, his muscles started expanding instantly, indicating a very clear spike in physical power. This was exactly the kind of physical upgrade he had been hoping for. His updated statistics displayed vitality at 123 and spirit at 265. He was clearly leveling up rapidly right before the audience's eyes, but he was far from finished. He decided to go absolutely nuts, pouring every single remaining point into the system until his counter hit 0. His mortal frame reached an impressive 36.1%, and things were about to get truly wild. He opted to put every last scrap of points into vitality and spirit, bracing himself for one final, enormous influx of power. With an incredible boom, Suhan exploded in a brilliant red aura, his body visibly manifesting the immense power surging within. He resembled a miniature supernova sitting comfortably on the hotel mattress. Gradually, the intense energy started to diminish, and his physical form reverted to its normal appearance. It was akin to witnessing a volcanic eruption finally subsiding into a gentle, harmless shimmer. He let out a deep sigh of relief that his appearance was back to normal. He thought with an exhausted smile that he really couldn't imagine trying to explain to someone why he suddenly looked like a bodybuilder. An hour later, Suhan pulled up to the Starsea Martial Artist Association. The high-tech structure was enormous, serving as the official starting point for anyone aspiring to become a professional combatant. He registered at the front desk, informing the clerk that he was present for his rank 1 evaluation. The woman seemed professional, yet it was obvious she processed hundreds of ambitious young hopefuls every single day. A staff member laid out the ground rules. To achieve rank 1, the person needs a minimum of 100 vitality and over 1,000 combat power. Suhan casually thanked them, knowing full well he was about to obliterate those paltry requirements. A few veteran-looking individuals in the waiting area started whispering, chuckling that he showed up solo, without a mentor. They assumed he was just some kid dipping his toes in the pool, completely unaware of the shock they were about to receive. The camera gives us a close-up of Suhan's determined eye. He was completely filtering out all the ambient chatter, concentrating entirely on the challenge in front of him. The results for the person before him were displayed. Anjay failed with a score of only 992 combat power. He let out a frustrated yell about how close he was, demonstrating exactly how stringent the requirements were. Next to approach was Lai Ming, who measured in at 105 vitality. He successfully cleared the first stage, causing the crowd to turn their attention toward him as he moved to the combat assessment machine. Lai Ming stepped forward to the testing machine, exuding confidence in his expensive attire. He took a calculated deep breath, channeling every last bit of his strength for one explosive strike. He unleashed a powerful punch accompanied by a focused roar. Blue energy followed his fist, clearly indicating he had undergone some significant, high-level training. The display instantly flashed his combat power score, a very respectable 1,760. This was a fantastic result that immediately sent a wave of excited chatter through the entire room. People recognized his style as the Thunderclap Fist and immediately identified him as a disciple from the Raging Thunder Dojo. They started cheering, claiming it made perfect sense that such a genius would be the highlight of the day. His master proudly clapped him on the shoulder, while Suhan observed from the edge, looking oddly bored. This so-called genius level was just child's play for our main character. Lai Ming sauntered past Suhan, offering a snide remark that he was up next. He wore that smug, entitled expression of someone who truly believes they've already conquered the pinnacle of martial arts. Leaning in conspiratorially, the fellow beside him whispered that he was present at such a young age because of his brilliant genius. He then snickered at Suhan, advising him that attempting to compare was a complete waste of effort. A second later, the collective gasp from the crowd could be heard from space. The vitality tester had just finished its calculation, leaving spectators looking like their brains were attempting an escape from their skulls. When Suhan's vitality flashed as 123, the crowd immediately descended into chaos. They started questioning if the machine was on the fritz, since a rookie achieving such a number was utterly unheard of. Lai Ming completely lost his composure, shouting wildly that the result was utterly impossible. He had just finished boasting about his own brilliance, only to be entirely overshadowed by the very person he had just insulted. To cope with the existential dread, Lai Ming tries to convince himself that vitality is pointless without real combat prowess. He's now sweating profusely, praying desperately that Suhan botches the next physical test entirely. Ignoring the escalating drama, Suhan calmly proceeded toward the combat power assessment machine. His relaxed demeanor only served to further ratchet up the collective anxiety of the spectators. He mused internally that after his recent physical upgrades, a mere 40% of his full strength would likely suffice for the passing grade. He was genuinely focused on restraining himself so he didn't accidentally demolish the testing facility. However, a new concern quickly surfaced. If he held back too significantly, he might actually undershoot the required score. He experienced a brief existential crisis regarding the proper percentage of force application, settling on 50% as a suitable compromise. He wound back his fist and adopted a stable low stance. The atmosphere around him began to visibly distort due to the immense latent power he was concentrating. A tremendous explosion echoed through the hall as he connected a standard, unembellished punch with a target. There were no complex techniques or flashy energy effects, just brute, unadulterated physical strength on display. The resulting impact was so enormous that the machine itself was instantly propelled backward. It soared across the testing area as it cracked from lightweight cardboard rather than solid heavy gauge metal. The tester slammed into the far wall, sparking violently and releasing plumes of smoke. Suhan remained completely still where he stood, peering as if he had just completed a gentle morning jog. The spectators were frozen in utter disbelief. One person managed to scream, questioning aloud whether he had truly launched the machine with just one punch. The fear intensified when they collectively realized he hadn't even engaged in a formal martial arts technique. The score finally appeared on the display, and jaws dropped completely. A high stage, rank 1 warrior usually maxes out around 3,000, yet Suhan, the total rookie, had somehow hit that exact number. The personnel at the center completely freaked out, immediately branding him an absolute monster. The news spread through the facility like a wildfire, creating the undeniable sense that they were witnessing the birth of a living legend. The instructor from the Raging Thunder Dojo watched, dumbfounded. He finally understood why his prized student, Lai Yen, had received such a devastating beatdown early that day at the training hall. We shift perspectives to a high-angle view of a luxurious office situated on the highest floor of the building. This opulent space serves as the inner sanctum for the association's president. President Wu Lingxian was visibly stressed, absently scrolling through her phone. She was currently agonizing over her branch's failure to generate new geniuses recently, which put her in jeopardy of losing her position. Abruptly, her assistant dramatically entered the room, shouting that a monster had just manifested in the assessment hall below. He was so excited he nearly face-planted on the carpet in his rush. The president glanced up, her eyes widening in genuine astonishment. She was informed that a rank 1 rookie had achieved 3,000 combat power using nothing but raw physical force, perhaps signaling a dramatic change in her fortunes. Suhan found himself being escorted through the colossal central atrium of the Martial Artist Association. The expansive space resembled a bustling, futuristic airport, swarming with warriors and staff as our hero ascended to the second floor. The staff member in designer sunglasses informed Suhan they would register his official identity first, then proceed to collect his monthly allowance. Suhan offered a polite thank you, maintaining his composure despite the imposing environment. Abruptly, a pair of fashionable boots came to a halt at the top of the staircase. A commanding voice cut through the background noise, instructing the staff member to step away, as she would be personally handling Suhan from now on. It was President Wu Lingxian, and she clearly understood how to command attention. With her flowing blonde hair and impeccably tailored clothing, she looked more like a supermodel than a seasoned warrior. However, her formidable aura proved she was absolutely legitimate. She fixed Suhan with an intense gaze before formally introducing herself as the president of the Star City branch. She then commanded him to follow her, conveying an unmistakable sense that no was not a word she frequently encountered. Suhan complied, his thoughts spinning rapidly. Rumor had it she was a tier 5 martial artist, which seemed utterly preposterous for someone who appeared so youthful. He was finally grasping that he had entered an entirely different league of power. They proceeded into her private office, which was precisely as opulent as one would expect from the head of the entire organization. Sunlight filled the space as Suhan took a seat, trying to anticipate what might happen next. President Wu leaned back on her couch, casually mentioning that Suhan's principal had been complaining about the school's decision to hide such a significant genius. She was clearly captivated by the young man who had just destroyed the combat tester. Suhan expressed mild confusion, explaining that he simply intended to acquire his ID card and a rudimentary guidance technique. Wuz, however, told him to relax, assuring him she had already instructed the staff downstairs to process his documents and paycheck. She then delivered the bombshell, announcing that she would personally instruct him in the guidance technique. For a rookie like Suhan, receiving one-on-one tutelage from a tier 5 president was essentially equivalent to activating a powerful cheat code. Rising with an air of gravity, she checks his basic understanding of the energy absorption methods. She needs to gauge his knowledge before diving into the interesting parts. Suhan spouts the textbook definition flawlessly. Kaya's specific attributes and guidance techniques are just ways to suck that energy in to make yourself stronger. While he aced the theory, she knows the real-world application is far more complex than a test answer. Wu clarifies that guidance techniques are not merely for sitting cross-legged in meditation. To prove her point, she demonstrates the heavenly flame method, causing her hand to instantly radiate a brilliant, fierce orange glow. She demonstrates precisely how this vital energy can be channeled around a fist, significantly boosting punching power. The goal isn't just to be resilient, but to transform your physical form into a working, torquing weapon of blazing destruction. Raising the stakes dramatically, she releases a huge pillar of fire that nearly sets the furniture ablaze. She clarifies that this external projection technique also expands your attack range, turning you into a long-distance hazard. Suhan's jaw practically hits the floor. He genuinely believed these methods were exclusively for quiet meditation, but witnessing the president unleash a fireball across the chamber certainly shattered that boring illusion. She describes the 7 distinct attributes of vital energy: metal, wood, water, fire, earth, thunder, and wind. Each element possesses unique advantages, and discovering your perfect match is a secret to unlocking true potential. Wu then details the power hierarchy, explaining that thunder takes the top spot for raw attack capability, with metal ranking second and fire coming in third. She seems extremely confident in her knowledge of these elemental rankings. She offers him a crystal orb, clarifying that your individual compatibility dictates which techniques you can truly master. It's essentially a compatibility quiz, only instead of a quiz, you get a like show and a potential fire hazard. She mentions that most practitioners typically score between 20 and 30%, while her own rare score reaches 80%. She then informs Suhan that a genius like him should probably expect to achieve at least a 90% reading. No pressure at all. Suhan takes hold of the orb, reflecting on how Wu achieved tier 5 at such a young age despite having only an 80% rating. He feels a growing anxiety about whether his own results will be able to match the high expectations placed upon him. The moment his fingers contact the surface, the ball instantly begins to respond. He internally debates whether reaching 90% might be overly optimistic, realizing the mysterious forces at play might have far different intentions for him. The orb doesn't just glow. It explodes with intensity. President Wu struggles to articulate that the display means 100% as a blinding light from the 5 compatibility reading illuminates the entire chamber. The student is basically a working inferno. Now visibly perspiring, Wu clarifies that a perfect score means he can absorb fire energy with absolute zero loss. Such flawless efficiency is an extraordinary achievement that almost every other warrior could only ever fantasize about possessing. Reeling from the revelation, she understands she is in the presence of someone whose future accomplishments will reduce her own to insignificant accomplishments. Star City has clearly given birth to an absolute anomaly. She lowers her voice and explains he possesses a talent level comparable to the most prodigious figures in the Magic City imperial capital. Her estimation of his potential has just skyrocketed beyond measure. Suhan holds the blazing orb, yet wears a distinctly unimpressed expression. While fire might be acceptable, he was real holding out for a thunder attribute instead. As if on cue, the orb immediately crackles with huge bolts of yellow lightning, entirely consuming the previous fiery aura. The sound of rolling thunder reverberates throughout the entire office. Suhan nonchalantly mentions that his thunder compatibility also seems to be at 100%. Meanwhile, President Wu stands completely motionless, likely wondering if she just experienced a psychotic break in her own office. The quiet continues for a painfully awkward duration. Suhan simply holds the glowing lightning sphere as if it were a harmless night light, while the president continues to stare at him in total bewilderment. Wu experiences an inner panic, internally declaring that having dual 100% compatibility in both fire and thunder attributes is simply unheard of. She has literally never encountered such a phenomenon during her entire professional life. The situation escalates further. The orb changes to a vibrant swirling green, and Suhan instantly asks the president if the wind attribute is also at 100%. At this point, he's basically just flexing his divine talents. Several minutes pass, and both individuals are sitting on the sofa in a state of bewildered shock. The tests have concluded, but the profound significance of the results is only beginning to register in their minds. Wu holds her head tightly, genuinely questioning if she is experiencing a vivid hallucination. Every single one of the 7 attributes read a complete 100%, meaning she has officially been surpassed by Junior in her own workdays. She recalls her younger days when reaching tier 5 made her feel like a unique and rare phoenix feather. Now, compared to Suhan, she feels like a completely average pigeon sitting on a wire. A mental image shows President Wu in her combat armor, looking formidable as she confronts a reality where the very laws of physics seem to be twisted. A huge monster bellows nearby, serving as a harsh reminder that the world remains treacherous, even for powerful individuals. We recognized during that specific fight that she was merely an average person compared to the genuinely devastating threats lurking out there. She recalls witnessing beings that completely defy logic and warriors who move in patterns that normal humans cannot possibly track. Now, she finds herself seated right beside one of them. A shadowy figure wielding a massive greatsword looms over a defeated enemy. Wu realizes that only those with equally unimaginable abilities can hope to survive the challenges on the horizon. Returning to the present moment, she glances over at Suhan. He represents an individual whose potential ordinary individuals simply cannot comprehend, exactly the ace up her sleeve that she desperately needed. Suhan finds himself in a pickle, possessing 7 perfect attributes yet feeling like a total chump for having to pick just one. He is basically drowning in the agony of being way too talented. He requests the secret manuals for every single path, leaving Wu staring blankly as if her internal operating system just hit a fatal error and crashed. She cautions him that human capacity is finite, citing a legendary cautionary tale of a guy who stayed a pathetic novice for decades by chasing too many rabbits. Suhan insists on sampling the buffet before ordering, but Wu warns him not to squander his godly potential on a path toward inevitable mediocrity. Shifting gears, she brings up the looming monthly exam, leaving Suhan baffled as to why she is dumping this stressful topic on him right now. She explains that the war of 10,000 races is heating up, and nations are frantically cramming geniuses into training camps to survive the brewing apocalypse. Snagging the top spot on the exam earns him a golden ticket to the camp, serving as his official stepping stone to becoming a global heavyweight. Suhan pledges his commitment, his gaze hardening with icy resolve as memories of his kin lost in the conflict a decade ago haunt his thoughts. A quick mental rewind shows a younger him trapped in a burning city, cementing his desperate need to gain power to shield his surviving family. He arrives home late under the pale moonlight, carrying life-altering news that will fundamentally shift his humble household's destiny forever. He informs his aunt and uncle about his Tier 1 promotion, leaving them completely pollexed as he displays the glowing proof on his digital device. His aunt dissolves into tears of pride, marveling at his transformation into a reliable man, marking a rare moment of joy for the struggling Klein. He explains the 10,000 credit monthly stipend, telling his uncle to finally retire from his backbreaking labor as Suhan steps up as a family anchor. Suhan offers a confident grin, promising to carry the burden for everyone, finally stepping into the role of the guardian he always envisioned becoming. In the quiet of his room, he begins his initial cultivation attempt, watching his crimson energy dances around him while he channels the flame technique. His eyes shimmer with raw intensity as he forces his internal energy to peak levels, attempting to replicate the spectacular release demonstrated by the president. A burst of fire erupts from his hand, though it looks far more like a messy kitchen disaster than the masterclass display he witnessed earlier. Thick smoke curls from his fingertips as he gasps for air, feeling the crushing toll that manipulating elemental essence takes on his physical frame. He scrutinizes his hand without a confusion, wondering why this basic technique feels as effective as a wet matchbook, leaving him feeling utterly underwhelmed. Scanning his system interface, he spots a newly generated tab for guidance techniques, confirming that he did indeed absorb the lessons after all. Seeing the label for the flame technique at 15% makes his jaw drop, as the president never hinted that these methods held levels. He realizes he holds a unique advantage, theorizing that his system can evolve these techniques while the rest of the world remains blissfully ignorant of their potential. Suhan scratches his head while analyzing the interface, debating if he can simply shove martial points into these new skills to bypass the grind. A harsh red warning flashes across his view, crushing his shortcut dreams, so he sighs and accepts that old-fashioned elbow grease is the only way forward. Like a human blender, Suhan tries to juggle all 7 elemental attributes simultaneously, whirling fire and lightning around like he's auditioning for a superhero movie. Hours later, the results are grim, as his various elemental energies are trapped in a bit of civil war, refusing to play nice inside his body. Looking absolutely haggard and drenched in sweat, he confirms Wu's theory that balancing 7 warring elements is a fast track to remaining a total bottom feeder. He watches a flickering flame in his palm, realizing that while he holds all 7 elements, forcing more than one out at once is a recipe for physical disaster. Ignoring his own advice, he decides to get cocky and ignite a second attribute, essentially deciding to play a high-stakes game of elemental Russian roulette. The thunder's pop echoes through the room as the clashing energies disintegrate in his palm, proving that trying to force opposites together just results in a puff of useless smoke. Divvying up is for quitters, and since sparks and flames are basically siblings, he gambles on a mashup, focusing like his lunch depends on it while watching static and fire tango across his palms. A huge burst erupts. He is definitely testing his insurance policy as his palms radiate a searing cocktail of amber and gold power while he attempts to superglue these two forces. Those unlucky folks next door probably called the police, as booms rattle his flat until sunrise while he yells for just one more go as the foundation vibrates from his errors. Morning arrives and the building survives by a thread. As day breaks, Suhan reflects on a night spent role-playing as a sentient and very loud firework display. He looks like a wet noodle, wheezing for breath and soaked in perspiration. He senses he is mere inches from the secret, digits quivering for a final attempt. He screams for the elements to cooperate, bending a tidal wave of juice that turns the room blinding, as bolts and blazes swirl around him in a messy vortex. Victory at last, he bellows in joy when a dense ball of plasma appears, resembling a pocket-sized star that threatens to melt his eyebrows off instantly. Mission accomplished. He grabs the hybrid lightning blaze sphere, appearing nearly dead but sporting a swag smell. This upgrade will definitely ruin someone's day later. Pleep is for the weak. He dons his armor and snatches his weapon, wandering out to locate a spot to measure the destruction this spicy mix brings. He reaches the local city training plaza, which is luckily empty during these unholy hours. It houses the heavy-duty gear required to check his lethal math. He notices a level 3 punching machine. This tank is way sturdier than the scrap metal he left at school. He assumes it will survive, which is cute. Time for a baseline. He tosses a casual 30% strike using just electricity. Despite holding back most of his juice, the thud sounds rather expensive. The monitor flashes 3,430, crushing his expectations, as that tap should have hit 1,800, meaning his base power climbed by 500 through new training. He gazes at his fist in shock. If a single element is this broken, he wonders how badly the blended energy will disrespect that innocent testing device. Prayers up, he prepares for round 2, pumping both fire and shock into his knuckles. The light is ice-searing, pumping with angry ribbons of plasma. With a thunderous crash, he buries the combined head into the target, triggering a crimson and golden detonation. It looks like a rocket hit. No hand. The screen flickers with 3041. He somehow smashed the 3000 wall at 30% output. This guy is basically a living exploit at this point. He notes that his buff body and mixed power make his weak hits beat high-tier experts, while his health is just 123, which is genuinely spooky. He begins fantasizing about merging all 7 flavors of power. If a duo is this scary, a full septet would likely transform him into a working deity. He is plotting his next session while staring at a palm-sized blaze. He returns home to attempt a triple element merge immediately. The boy lacks any chill. Another midnight roof party, visible from miles away as a flickering dot in the shadows while he proceeds with his hazardous science projects. He looks like garbage again, confessing that juggling 3 powers is vastly more painful. He spent the entire night achieving absolutely nothing but a headache. He inspects his UI, which lists level 1 for 5 distinct skills. He ponders if he must grind these separately before he can successfully stack them together. Tomorrow at the academy, the arena overflows with kids wearing matching tracksuits. The monthly test crowd is massive, and the vibe is incredibly stressful. The boss man delivers a grim monologue, stating this test matters more due to border wars. They are hunting for elites to join a fresh boot camp. He mentions a citywide prodigy camp, offering fancy gear and even rank 7 masters as coaches. The podium finishers get a golden ticket inside. The mob loses it. Everyone is screaming and desperate for a slot. Suhan's buddy is stoked for rank 7 teachers, given the current mentor is weak. Suhan is nervous. However, Boss Wu ordered him to snag first place for referral, so a bronze or silver medal simply won't help him. He catches rumors that Chen Shan and Lai Tu recently hit rank 1 status. Rumor has it they already learned the electric sprint punch basics. It seems big brother Chen Jian is coaching them personally due to the skills. The rest of the class already gave up on beating them. Chen Shan and Lai Tu strutted past with arrogant smiles, looking like they owned the place. Chen Shan loudly bragged that he was going to flatten every single competitor and decisively prove he was the absolute best. Principal Lai and Chen Tan were having a quiet conversation, with Chen Tan asking if they had located that elusive 9 Echoes prodigy yet. Lai admitted he had searched everywhere, but the kid seemed to have vanished completely. Suddenly, Chen Tan stopped and turned around, sensing something unusual in the crowd. He let out a curious noise, his gaze narrowing intensely as he scanned the hundreds of students present. A group of men in sharp suits arrived, led by Jiang Ming from the Raging Thunder Dojo. He worked with an excessive amount of swagger, flanked by his disciples Lai Yan and Lai Ming. Jiang Ming greeted his old rival with a cutting jab about the mediocre quality of the school's students. He then publicly challenged the school's first-place winner to spar with his disciples after the exam. Principal Lai started fuming, realizing this entire visit was just a show designed to humiliate the school in front of everyone. He knew refusing the challenge would be admitting his students were inferior. Jiang Ming kept prodding, mockingly saying he understood if they were afraid to compete. Lai too was visibly offended, looking as if he were ready to jump Jiang Ming right then and there for calling them weak. Lai Yan, standing in the back, suddenly looked like he had seen a ghost. Sweating nervously, he tapped his teacher's shoulder and pointed urgently toward a specific student in the audience. Jiang Ming began to ask which Su Lai Yan meant, but as he turned his head, his eyes went wide with shock. He had finally spotted the infamous little monster he had been explicitly warned about. It was Su Han, casually strolling along with his hands stuffed deep in his pockets. He looked completely unbothered, while the Raging Thunder Dojo group collectively appeared to be on the verge of a full-blown panic attack. Jiang Ming's thoughts were spiraling into internal panic. He couldn't believe that the kid who had completely dominated his best students was actually enrolled in this very school. It was truly a worst-case scenario. He realized immediately that if Lai Yan or Lai Ming fought this kid, they would be utterly annihilated. He frantically tried to devise a strategy to save face and avoid total embarrassment. He did a complete 180-degree turn, immediately conceding and saying his own useless disciples could never possibly compare to the school's geniuses. It was a total, humiliating surrender. Principal Lai and Chen Tian were both confused and enraged. They thought Jiang Ming was being incredibly sarcastic, feigning humility as a way to mock them, completely unaware he was genuinely terrified. The monthly exam officially commenced. The announcer called for match number 665, featuring Chen Peng, and match number 666, featuring Su Han, to enter the arena. Su Han's friend anxiously warned him that his opponent was a quasi-martial artist and urged him not to get hurt. Su Han simply gave him an utterly expressionless look, silently conveying, "Dude, seriously." The opponent, Chen Peng, immediately started spouting insults. He confidently asked Su Han if he intended to work down on his own, radiating total overconfidence. He roared for Su Han to be beaten into submission, charging forward with a fist glowing brightly. He was convinced he would get an easy victory over a random, unsuspecting student. With an audible crack, Su Han launched a high-speed kick that connected squarely with Chen Peng's chest. The impact was so massive it looked like Chen Peng had just tried to high-five a speeding freight train. The opponent was launched flying across the arena, crashing onto the ground in a crumpled heap. The fight concluded before most people in the audience even realized it had truly begun. The crowd was stunned into silence. Su Han's friend completely freaked out, wondering when his buddy had transformed into such a terrifying powerhouse. The principal and Chen Tian stared in total disbelief. Su Han stood calmly, looking completely bored as energy subtly swirled around him. He had just dispatched a quasi-martial artist in a single move, as if swatting away a fly. The tournament suddenly looked very interesting. Su Han secured another effortless victory, standing tall as his opponent lay defeated in the dirt. The crowd went ballistic, wondering how this kid could possibly be so strong and questioning if he had already reached Tier 1 status. The teachers, Chen Tian and Principal Lai, watched from the viewing balcony with dumbfounded expressions. Chen Tian was baffled, trying to figure out where Su Han had come from and why he hadn't noticed him during his private tutoring sessions. Chen Tian realized he had made a catastrophic error by failing to recognize Su Han earlier, essentially overlooking a once-in-a-lifetime talent. He also had a persistent nagging feeling that he had seen the kid somewhere before, but couldn't quite place it yet. Principal Lai focused his attention on the ring, noting that the semi-final match between the school's two top geniuses, Chen Chen and Lai Tu, should be wrapping up soon. The two competitors were engaged in an intense, high-velocity exchange, their forms dissolving into a blur of rapid kicks and blocks. They appeared perfectly matched in both strength and agility, with neither one willing to yield an inch. Lai Tu was the first to escalate, his fist wreathed in crackling blue energy as he prepared his attack. He mocked Chen Chen, telling him he had no chance of winning unless he deployed his ultimate move right now. Chen Chen refused to back down, answering the challenge with a determined roar. He was absolutely committed to proving he was a true number one of the school as he powered up his own strike. He unleashed a punch that glowed with a fierce, fiery orange aura. He called out, demonstrating to everyone present that he had successfully mastered the ability to project his elemental ki. The entire audience went absolutely crazy when Chen Chen used his fire attribute, which is known for its incredible destructive potential. Everyone was certain he had already won this match, but the competition was about to get seriously intense. Lai Tu simply scoffed, wondering aloud who didn't know how to do attribute externalization these days. He suddenly flared up with a brilliant white-blue aura, his own element starting to take shape around his fists. The students were even more shocked now when Lai Tu revealed he held the metal attribute, famous for having even higher war combat power than fire. It had quickly become a literal clash of titans in the middle of the arena. Lai Tu lunged forward, resembling a human bullet as his metal energy pulsed intensely. He had one final magic trick planned to completely end this fight for good. He bellowed out the name 5 echoes, Thunder Rush Fist, unleashing a devastating blow that echoed throughout the entire stadium. This technique was far beyond what most low-level artists could pull off. The two top students collided in a massive explosion of fire and metal energy. The subsequent impact created a huge shockwave that temporarily filled the screen with light and dust. Up on the balcony, the teachers were genuinely impressed that Lai Tu had concealed his mastery of the 5 echoes technique so well. Chen Tian noted that in only 10 days, he had mastered externalization and reached the micro level, calling him an absolute freak of nature. Principal Lai decided the final was already over, stating Su Han could never overcome Lai Tu's micro level mastery and metal attribute. He actually felt sorry for Su Han, thinking he was totally outmatched without any sort of guidance technique. Suddenly, a flashy guy in a suit stepped forward and placed a 50,000 credit bet on Su Han winning first place. He was clearly trying to make a fortune while the teachers were busy writing Su Han off. The final match was officially called No. 1 Lai Tu versus No. 666 Su Han. Su Han's best friend was screaming like a maniac in the stands, urging him to grab the championship trophy. Lai Tu immediately started a trash talk monologue, telling Suhan he was only fortunate he hadn't faced him or Chen Shan sooner. He claimed Suhan simply slipped into the finals while the truly good fighters were occupied elsewhere. Suhan simply gazed at his hands, looking utterly bored by the entire exchange. He was thinking that after hunting actual monsters in the wilderness, these high school children felt like they were moving in exaggerated slow motion. Lai Tu kept running his mouth, condescendingly telling Suhan he could at least claim the number 2 spot in the school since he made it this far. He was truly convinced he had already secured the win. Suhan gave him a cool side-eye and simply asked who exactly number 1 was supposed to be. He calmly stepped forward, pointing right at himself, and delivered the ultimate boast. Number 1 is obviously me. Lai Tu was immediately triggered by the response and charged forward with a furious roar. He told Suhan that he only required one single attack to demonstrate the massive difference in power between them. Lai Tu started by going completely all in, unleashing the 5 Echoes Thunder Rush fist immediately. The audience was convinced the match was over, assuming Suhan was guaranteed to lose against such a high-level technique. We saw a terrifying close-up shot of Suhan's eyes glowing with an intense golden light. He remained perfectly calm, treating this so-called ultimate move as if it were just a simple warm-up drill. Lai Tu's glowing fist was inches from Suhan's face. Suhan simply thought to himself that he only wanted to assess his physical limits before finally starting to take things seriously. The other students started to panic, convinced Suhan was completely insane for not evading. He simply stood there and raised his own fist to meet the attack head-on, which looked like a total suicide pact. 5 distinct explosive sounds occurred as Suhan countered every single one of Lai Tu's rapid-fire punches. He was interpreting the ultimate move with the ease of reading an open picture book. In an absolute blur, Suhan landed a heavy counterpunch directly through Lai Tu's defense. The impact was so precise and powerful that it instantly stalled all of Lai Tu's forward momentum. Lai Tu was completely stunned, his eyes wide with disbelief. He just couldn't comprehend how Suhan had neutralized his absolute best move using only 5 seemingly basic punches. The battle continued as a fast blur of movement in the center of the ring. Suhan was somehow matching a high-level martial art using absolutely nothing but his raw physical power. Lai Tu thought to himself, wondering if this guy was actually a monster as he tried to keep pace. Every single one of Suhan's punches felt like it was thrown by a giant, even though he wasn't using any special techniques. The crowd was completely losing their minds, realizing Suhan hadn't even started using a martial art yet. They were calling his raw strength completely terrifying as he held his ground against the school's top genius. Principal Lai was ecstatic, convinced Suhan must have a rare special physique. He was already laughing and claiming credit for his school's production of such a legendary new genius. Chen Tian, however, was far more observant, noting that even though Suhan's strength was incredible, Lai Tu's metal attribute externalization should still give him the final advantage. He wasn't quite ready to crown a new champion just yet. The 2 warriors exchanged one massive strike and slid back to opposite ends of the arena. The floor was visibly cracked under their feet, demonstrating exactly how much raw power they were throwing around. Lai Tu was screaming now, telling Suhan to stop acting so arrogant because he charged in for one desperate final strike, his metal energy flaring brighter than it ever had before. He yelled for Suhan to grant him defeat, pouring every single ounce of his being into this last attack. Suhan lets out a weary sigh while remaining entirely unbothered, thinking he only meant to gauge his own limits until Lai Tu forced his hand by going completely overboard. It's time to finish this, so Suhan clenches his fist while yellow sparks fly, muttering that if Lai Tu insists on using full power then he should be honored. He delivers a heady blow while calmly whispering thunder, and the sheer force of the impact causes the entire arena floor to rattle and shake. Lai Tu looks absolutely horrified as he stammers about attribute externalization, finally grasping that he has been hopelessly outclassed by a monster this whole time. Up in the stands, the teachers are struggling to keep their balance, stunned by the realization that Suhan has mastered the legendary and most lethal thunder element. Den Tian is practically shrieking in disbelief because a unique physique paired with top-tier attack power is a talent so terrifying that he has never witnessed it. The lightning punch makes contact, flooding the screen with golden radiance as Suhan executes his devastating thunder rush technique with absolute and total precision. Lai Tu gets launched across the arena like a rebel by the intense electric surge, having failed to even raise a guard against such a brutal strike. A massive golden pillar of raw power tears through the center of the field like a divine orbital strike, leaving Suhan standing amidst the sparks like a war god. The impact sends Lai Tu skidding across the dirt, his frame smoldering and battered from the electricity until he passes out before even touching the floor. He gasps about the 9 echoes with his final shred of awareness, finally coming to terms with the fact that he was dismantled by a master of perfection. Lai Tu slumps into the dust while hacking up blood, marking a humiliating end for the arrogant kid who genuinely believed he was the undisputed top dog. Suhan looms over the defeated fighter with a bored look, not even winded, appearing as though he could handle a dozen more rounds without breaking a sweat. The remaining elite students watch from the sidelines in stunned silence, their jaws hitting the floor as they realize the school hierarchy has been permanently flipped. The crowd finally finds its voice and erupts in cheers, questioning if Suhan really won and hailing his 9 echoes as an elite technique that shames the faculty. Chen Tian finally connects the dots regarding the mysterious 9 echoes genius, realizing that Suhan is a dragon far too big for this small star city. He ponders the coming training camp and expects total chaos when this powerhouse encounters the spoiled heirs, who have no clue what sort of trouble is brewing. Suhan strolls through the streets with his hands in his pockets looking like a boss, while the narrator notes that his city is just a puddle for this dragon. Principal Lai nods with immense pride, viewing the lad as a dragon escaping the abyss destined to dominate the imperial capital or even the brutal racial wars. Suhan heads home under the orange sunset, greeting his aunt and uncle with a cheerful shout as he prepares to drop some massive news on them. As the family gathers for dinner, Suhan grins and reveals he secured first place, finally showcasing the hard-earned fruits of his intense physical training. His uncle is floored and repeats the news in sheer delight, realizing that his nephew has officially punched his ticket to the prestigious elite training camp. The calm vibe is suddenly ruined by aggressive banging on the front door, causing Suhan to stiffen as he detects a rather hostile aura outside. The shrill woman yells from the porch demanding to know if this is Suhan's residence, sounding like she's definitely not here to deliver a fruit basket. Suhan swings the door open to find a fancy but stuck-up woman, so he simply asks who she is while sizing up his uninvited guest. She identifies herself as a parent of the fourth-place kid, then shamelessly demands that Suhan surrender his spot so her own mediocre son can take it. She skips the pleasantries and offers him 30,000 credits to quit, clearly assuming that money can easily purchase a future her boy failed to earn. Suhan stares at her with total indifference toward the bribe, while his aunt and uncle stand in the background looking bewildered by her sheer audacity. When her offer fails to land, she switches to scare tactics by claiming the camp is deadly and that poor students frequently perish during the brutal trials. She keeps up her snooty lecture about him lacking the resources of rich kids on fancy pills, condescendingly claiming that quitting is truly for his own protection. Only text N. The scare tactics totally spook Suhan's aunt, whose terrified face asks if the camp is genuinely that lethal, while his uncle attempts to keep things cool despite the room's mounting tension. Turning to Suhan with a stern look, his uncle demands the honest truth, brushing off the woman's prattle to ask his nephew point-blank if his safety is actually guaranteed. Suhan meets his uncle's gaze without hesitation and vows he can handle it, his resolve rock solid because he refuses to let some bull scare him away from his aspirations. The woman scoffs at a kid's promise, but the uncle shuts her down fast, insisting he trusts his own kin far more than some random meddling stranger. The drama concludes with the uncle putting his foot down and telling the arrogant lady to take a hike, then slamming the door in her face to finalize the matter. She stands fuming outside the locked entrance with a face twisted in fury, howling that they will live to regret this and that Suhan will surely be purged from the camp soon. As she stumps off, Suhan feels a pang of guilt for withholding the full scope of the danger, but his uncle offers a supportive glance to let him know it is all good. While admitting he's a simple man unfamiliar with camp nuances, he trusts Suhan's brain, grinning as he declares that they fully support his grit to overcome any obstacle. Giving his nephew a massive thumbs up, the uncle displays complete faith in his journey, the kind of encouragement that makes even the toughest grind feel worthwhile. His aunt is still fretting, nudging the uncle to tell Suhan that rankings matter little to her, since she only cares about him returning home in one piece. Suhan flashes her a warm smile and nods, deeply moved by their affection and more determined than ever to claim victory for their sake. Later that evening, the city lights shimmer below while Suhan lingers on his balcony, the quiet solitude a strange contrast to the impending storm of his future training. He gazes across the cityscape, promising himself he will grow strong enough to shield this life, knowing full well his family's silent anxiety is a burden he must handle. Pulling up his stats, he finds a 285 martial value bonus from the recent exams, which is a nice haul but hardly enough to survive what lies ahead. Deciding to prioritize brute combat power to keep pace with the camp's hidden prodigies, he taps the interface to pour all his points into his mortal body stat. Crimson energy erupts around him as the system begins its overhaul, and one can watch the numbers climb while his physique is forcibly pushed beyond ordinary human limits. With his body reaching 64.6%, he feels his raw strength swell tremendously and wonders what unique form he will unlock once he finally hits the century mark. Unexpectedly, he spots something new on his screen, noting both his thunder and heavenly flame techniques have hit level 2, a surprise since he barely trained them. He guesses that regular cultivation naturally boosts these skills over time, which is a relief since his mundane routine is producing such high-tier results. Deciding to push for one more level, he keeps sparks and flames dancing between his palms, grinding through the night to squeeze every drop of potential out of his body. Dawn creeps over the horizon as Suhan concludes his intense drill, completely drained but flashing a gleam in his eyes that proves he wasted zero time. We get a zoom-in shot of his glowing gaze as the final breakthrough occurs, signaling that the morning sun is not the only thing ascending today. He sits cross-legged amidst a whirlwind of chaotic elements as his techniques reach level 3, his aura radiating a much more polished and dangerous intensity than before. His vitality ticked up another 3 points as a bonus, leaving him thrilled by this lucky windfall as his path to glory seems clearer than ever. On the morning of departure, his uncle works him to the sidewalk, offering one final plea to play it safe and retreat if things get too dicey. Suhan waves goodbye while shouldering his spear, his uncle shouting for him to bring back a gold medal, his prior anxiety replaced by fiery competitive spirit. As he navigates the bustling city, Suhan looks like just another average student, yet he carries the heavy hopes of his entire family upon his shoulders. Watching him retreat from the doorway, his aunt and uncle share a look, the man admitting he only acted tough to spare his nephew's feelings, revealing just how deeply they care. Suhan strolls through the shopping district while mentally gearing up for the camp, completely unaware that a high-speed visitor is rapidly closing the gap behind him. Without warning, the sixth sense triggers and he glances back, the valiant roar of an engine and screeching rubber shattering the morning peace. Only text N. The cherry red sports car screeches to a halt beside him on the pavement, instantly turning heads as the flashy ride makes every pedestrian stop and ogle the high-end metal. President Wu sits in the driver's seat looking smooth behind her shades, barking a curt hop in, clearly not the type to sit around waiting for a slow reply. The crimson vehicle tears down the asphalt, darting through lanes with professional agility, as Suhan cruises toward a bright future in total high-speed luxury. The car blurs into a red streak while racing toward the camp, and Suhan finally ventures past his familiar safety to face the wild mysteries ahead. Suhan wonders if this is more than just a ride, asking the president why she is suddenly taking such a personal interest in his humble career. A serious-faced Wu reveals she holds the secret files of every contestant, intent on giving him a rude awakening regarding the monsters he will soon challenge. She warns that some rivals are nearly tier 2 stage artists, prompting Suhan to listen intently while gauging his formidable competition before he even arrives. She notes those freaks start with B-rank martial arts, providing a massive edge over the basic maneuvers taught to most students at the local schools. Suhan remains unbothered, knowing he can instantly master any B-rank technique through his system space, keeping his cool while others might start sweating bullets. Wu calls him the most talented kid ever, blaming his lack of resources for his slow start, and promises that greatness is inevitable if he ignores minor hurdles. Suhan calls her sister Wu as a sign of respect, fully prepared to prove that Star City breeds legends instead of just producing more forgettable underdogs. Wu glances sideways, impressed by his calm reaction to such deadly competition, realizing this kid has nerves of steel and is truly built for the chaos. The story shifts to the icy Tanlin range where a lone black car climbs a treacherous road, putting immense distance between them and the safe city. Principal Lai offers a final pep talk, claiming that Grandmasters guard the camp and that his survival is practically guaranteed, provided things do not go south. Suhan peers out the window at the vast, beast-filled wilderness, knowing rumors persist of massive kings lurking inside that could rival top-tier grandmasters. The local fauna are leagues beyond ordinary, as even the supposedly weak beasts in the outer ring are significantly more vicious than city-dwelling monsters. The triple-eye tiger is currently munching on a rival, proving this habitat is essentially a gory buffet where only the fastest hunters manage to survive. The tiger lets out a deafening roar that rattles the trees, serving as a reminder that these brutal predators would make most Tier 2 warriors flee. The dark fan swishes past a thick tree line, the air growing noticeably thicker and more hostile with every mile they push into the dense woods. Dozens of glowing red eyes watch from the dark forest, while two enormous bears lurk in the shadows, waiting for someone to exit their metal shell. The other students in the back are trembling, one asking if they are being hunted, clearly terrified that a hungry beast might pop out at any moment. Suhan remains completely stoic, staring at the forest and realizing the competition will be just as bloodthirsty as the monsters, a thought he weirdly enjoys. The vehicle stops at the fortified training camp, a giant collection of tents and wire fences where crowds of students have already begun to assemble. Suhan and his group step out with gear and weapons in hand, his eyes scanning the crowd to see how the other regional prodigies stack up. The camp is overflowing with armored students who look like hardened killers, and the intense atmosphere makes it obvious that only the strong will thrive. Two guys in matching uniforms give the newcomers a sneering look, and the tension is so thick you could slice it with a dull pocket knife. Suhan looks right at home, calmly tightening his spear strap with a blue-eyed gaze, focusing entirely on snatching the top spot from every single rifle. As the group heads to the main arena, Suhan stands out by looking bored, especially compared to the other kids who are visibly trembling in their boots. The camp official holds up a hand to stop them, explaining that they have to wait for the stragglers to show up before the real fun begins. Suhan is shocked to learn there is a mandatory entrance exam before the actual camp starts, because apparently, nothing in this life is ever simple. Suhan glances over as some loudmouth announces the big shots, grumbling about how wealthy clans love making grand entrances like they own the local scenery. A caravan of flashy sports cars and SUVs barrels into the camp, leaving a thick haze of dirt behind while clearly belonging to kids immune to monster attacks. Car doors fly open as the VIPs step onto the dusty ground, while the onlookers whisper breathlessly about the cool and gorgeous goddess Iro Yan. The elite lineup is unveiled, featuring spiritual experts Iro Yan, near tier 2 fighter Lin Xingyi, and the Sea Lord Sun Qin Jingxiu, those very monsters we warned about. These three wonderkinds strut through the crowd as if walking a red carpet, radiating such arrogant confidence that every other student seems like a blurry extra in the movie. Suhan eyes them sideways, mentally checking them against his notes to confirm these are indeed the Star City legends he needs to wipe the floor with. He figures he will just see how smart they truly are, feeling zero intimidation and viewing them merely as premium loot drops for his handy system. Looking sharp in a suit, the head instructor strides forward to kill the chatter and finally kick off this assessment with some ground rules. Gesturing toward the distant craggy mountains, he notes the training base sits 30 kilometers away, serving as the opening leg of the little cross-country hike. He displays a wooden token, mentioning they are stashed inside various local beasts, and explains that no token means you are heading home in total failure. Panic spreads through the crowd, as trekking 30 clicks through a predator-filled mountain range in 8 hours sounds less like a jog and more like a funeral. Suhan, however, is busy crunching numbers and grinning because 8 hours offers plenty of time to hunt some monsters and hoard a mountain of martial points. When a nervous kid asks about meeting creatures way above their pay grade, the instructor just gives him a stone-cold glare and promises a swift, painful elimination. The group starts whining about unfair luck, petrified that some random monster encounter might end their promising careers before the starting whistle even blows. Shutting them up instantly, the instructor barks that life is not a kindergarten game and complaining about fairness is laughable compared to dying on a real battlefield. This parting advice is straightforward, suggesting they watch their backs to avoid an early grave, since he cares about results rather than their fragile feelings. He tells them to dodge risks, pick on the weak, and gang up like wolves, essentially teaching them that survival in war ignores all rules of decency. A super-erring student joins the mockery by labeling everyone else trash, clearly drunk on his own superiority and status in the social hierarchy. When someone dares him to repeat that, the suited jerk just smirks, calling him a pathetic loser and looking ready to break his spine for sport. The instructor adds one final rule, noting that while the camp is a no-fighting zone, everything goes once they enter the mountains, including theft and brawling. Mayhem ensues immediately as the suited bowler lands a nasty punch on a complainer, proving this assessment is turning into a messy bloodbath. Suhan watches the circus with a bored look, realizing they have been given a green light to hunt each other, and Harf will likely never finish. Instead of shaking in his boots, Suhan feels pumped, eyeing all these potential training dummies he can smack around to rake in some easy points. The instructor clicks his stopwatch, bellows that the fun begins now, and suddenly the stampede is unleashed as the students charge forward. The entire pack of teenagers bolts like a panicked herd, shoving and elbowing each other in a frantic dash to invade the forest first. From above, the students look like a scattering swarm heading the tree line, signaling the start of a race that will make the quiet woods quite loud, and fighting breaks out within seconds as two sprinting fools trade insults, with one promising to send the other home before they even spot a wild beast. With absolutely no chill, one guy blasts a flame punch at a classmate who barely tanks it with a blue shield, sabotaging rifles before the first kilometer. The farce turns into a war zone as students clash, creating a chaotic soup of elemental flashes and brawling bodies desperate to weed out their peers. The echoes of high-level martial arts ring through the canopy, showing these kids are way more bloodthirsty and unhinged than the folks back at Suhan School. Only text N. Neon lasers and shockwaves tear through the shrubs like a chaotic rave, yet these supposedly brilliant students seem too busy brawling to hunt for a single token. Suhan stands nonchalant with his spear, observing the scuffle with mild boredom, convinced the hyped-up geniuses are actually just loudmouthed amateurs. He pivots to trek deeper into the forest, preferring to grind high-level beasts for actual points rather than babysitting these toddlers in their messy sandbox. An entitled brat stops him by belittling another student, flaunting his ancestral wealth as if bank accounts could dodge a fist, while mocking the value of hard work. The victim stands frozen in silence, unable to clap back at the rich kid, while Suhan watches with narrow eyes, clearly unimpressed by the arrogant display. A predatory smirk creeps onto Suhan's face, realizing these two morons are essentially working gift baskets of points just begging to be rated. He slides between the bickering pair, feigning the role of a concerned peacekeeper while radiating the calm, dangerous energy of a hungry wolf. Resting his spear on his shoulder, he offers them a bored look, suggesting they quit the pathetic drama and let him join the fun instead. The rich kid bowls with rage, shrieking at Suhan to beat it or get smacked, foolishly picking a fight with someone who clearly views him as an ant. Suhan rolls his eyes, inviting both clowns to tag team him at once, because apparently, one-sided beatings are just far too boring for his taste. The first amateur takes the bait with a savage roar, hurling a haymaker while screaming about his wounded pride and Suhan's imminent doom. Watching the slow-motion punch arrive, Suhan remains as steady as a rock, having already analyzed the predictable trajectory of the clumsy strike. Suhan drills a glowing blue fist into the guy's gut, causing his eyes to bulge like goldfish while he releases a desperate, muffled whimper. A massive shockwave sends the guy spiraling through the air like a broken umbrella, leaving him spinning wildly while Suhan prepares for round 2. The remaining student stands paralyzed with terror, sweating through his shirt as he realizes he chose the wrong target to mess with today. Before the guy can even blink, Suhan blurs across the gap, peering inches away to inform him that his brief life of comfort is ending. The victim gasps in pure panic as Suhan swings his heavy spear case like a giant baseball bat, leaving absolutely no room for a defense. A sickening crack echoes as the case connects with the guy's skull, scattering teeth like confetti, proving that picking fights with Suhan is a great career error. Suhan smacks the rich brat in the jaw with a brutal hook, turning his fancy face into a disaster zone while he emits a pathetic, broken moan. The bull sprawls in the dirt like a discarded toy, while Suhan leans on his gear, lecturing the fool about the hazards of sneering at everyday warriors. Inside the control center, instructors gape at the monitors, utterly flabbergasted that this random kid just deleted the 2 prize prospects in seconds. An official asks if the brats are out, but the boss shakes his head, noting they didn't hit the rescue button, so the circus is allowed to continue. The rich brat groggily regains consciousness, his head throbbing like a drum, slowly realizing his golden ticket to victory has turned into a total disaster. Squinting through the haze, he spots his bruised partner nearby, and honestly, neither of them looks like a terrifying genius at this pathetic moment. The posh bull shrieks that he has never felt such disrespect, swearing vengeance upon Suhan with a vow that sounds like a cartoon villain's empty promise. He hammers the dirt in a tantrum, blaming bad luck for the threshing, as if his own blaring lack of skill wasn't the actual reason he lost. The two battered rivals share a tragic, silent look, finally processing the harsh reality that they both got absolutely schooled by the same guy. The second guy offers a shaky apology, admitting Suhan is indeed a monster, marking a rare moment of clarity for a former egomaniac. The rich brat nuts, conceding that he should have kept his trap shut earlier, as they solidify their alliance in the losers club of bad decisions. They stomp off into the foliage to chase their revenge, blissfully unaware they are marching straight back into yet another inevitable, painful smackdown. Suhan resumes his grueling trek, tipping through the timber like a sapphire streak, looking more like he is casually strolling through a park than on a lethal mission. He pauses to scan his surroundings, squinting as he detects a hulking presence stirring in the underbrush, feeling primed and eager for a violent skirmish. A cluster of pathetic tusked boars erupts from the thicket, wheezing and snorting, while Suhan groans at the sheer abundance of these weaklings cluttering his trail. The swine stampede toward him with lowered tusks, resembling living demolition equipment, though the dusty entrance fails to impress our incredibly bored hero. One enraged boar bellows while charging, its scarlet gaze screaming insanity, but our guy has already begun coiling his muscles for a painful response. Suhan deploys a crackling thunder fist, his palm radiating golden voltage before he clucks the lead beast in the jaw with a strike resembling a literal zap. A thunderous detonation clears the foliage, launching the remaining swines in every possible direction while an echoing roar of electricity lingers in the air. Standing over the wreckage with his knuckles still smoldering, Suhan laments that these measly kills used to offer plenty of points, but now he feels slighted. Checking his holographic interface reveals insulting gains like +6 or 9, proving that since he ascended, these bottom-tier monsters barely pay for his gas. He digs through the boar innards for a prize, grumbling that his previous dozen kills yielded absolutely 0 tokens, and his patience is quickly evaporating. Surrounded by a pile of pork, he realizes his luck remains stagnant, suspecting he is either in a dead zone where these losers just lack the goods. Wiping his hands, he surveys the silent woods, concluding that only elite beasts hold the loot he craves and deciding to push deeper into the danger. Half an hour later, he navigates the dense woods with calculated precision, eyes glowing azure as he stalks the bitter prey hidden within the shadows. He finds it odd that 5 kilometers back he averaged 10 kills an hour, yet this deep in the forest, the silence is becoming deafeningly eerie. A massive ebony shadow looms from the cliffside, its crimson eyes staring down at him with an aura far more menacing than those puny boars. Spotting a tier 1 upper stage dark night taiga, a predatory smirk emerges, realizing he has finally located the challenging target he was hunting. The feline leaps, so Suhan meets the challenge with a void-piercing strike that fires a blue energy beam reminiscent of a sci-fi orbital blast. The Titan tiger hits the dirt, first sizzling from the arcane heat, proving it was no match for the high-level techniques in Suhan's arsenal. Moving with blurring speed to avoid any mishaps, he executes a lethal spear jab to finish the beast, showing the upper-tier animal no mercy. A massive shockwave ripples through the forest floor as the spear lands, killing the tiger instantly before it could process its own sudden demise. Observing his system log a +35 bonus, he muses that annihilating these strun beasts has become as effortless as breathing for his upgraded frame. Preparing for the next round, he mumbles a quick prayer that this particular carcass actually contains the elusive token he desperately needs to find. Victory arrives as he pulls a blood-slicked wooden tack from the stomach, noting that securing the single piece cost him nearly 3 hours of work. Scanning the rugged mountains, he deciphers the tactical pattern, realizing the trade-off between the rarity of elite encounters and the ease of weak ones. Gazing at another downed tiger, he realizes that finding one of these per hour will make his point farming speed look like a geriatric turtle. Suhan begins strategizing, choosing to trade prestige for sheer volume and deciding to backtrack toward the outskirts where the mobs are overflowing. Glancing at his watch, he notes 5 hours remain and calculates he needs a massive point harvest to complete his physical body transformation soon. The following hour is a total slaughter, featuring a montage of Suhan tearing through groups of monsters like an absolute whirlwind of carnage. He stands amidst a graveyard of failed beasts, remaining completely calm while noting that after a flurry of weaklings, he finally found a middle-stage target. A gargantuan black bay charges with a roar, dwarfing our hero, yet Suhan simply plants his feet firmly and winds up a punching blow. Only text N. Suhan prepares a spicy knuckle sandwich, his hand blowing like a spicy street food stall, ready to drop at the Stark Haymaker. The thunderous pop lights up the woods like a cheap fireworks show, and the gust is currently giving the trees a free haircut. We zoom into the bear's gaping pie hole as it catches the blow, effectively turning its skull into a complicated jigsaw puzzle. Peering into the bear's glowing yellow eyeball, you spot Suhan reflected inside, looking back a split second before the beast hits snooze. Shooting from a low angle, we see Suhan hopping about while launching the bear into orbit, proving that gravity is just a suggestion. The chin-checking kicks in Zabay soaring, and he notes his physique hits 60%, meaning he can pummel mid-tier beasts without breaking a sweat. Wiping gore off his mug, he keeps his cool despite looking like he lost a wrestling match with a ketchup factory in a monsoon. Scanning his stats, he hits 64.6% physical status with 254 points, meaning he is roughly 100 clicks away from being totally jacked. With 3 hours on the clock, he feels golden and ready to hunt, adjusting his gear to find more beasts to turn into loot drops. Suddenly, the mountain range decides to perform a heavy metal drum solo, causing Suhan's survival instincts to kick into high gear. He stares toward the ruckus, his face draining of color, sensing that whatever is making that racket is clearly out of his pay grade. A golden bird the size of a cruise ship dominates the sky, its mere oar pressing down on the atmosphere like a heavy duvet. That avian monstrosity lets out a screech that would silence a rock concert, showcasing fiery feathers that scream apex predator energy. A single wing flap nearly sends Suhan flying into next week, reminding him that being a strong guy in a forest of titans is a major tactical blunder. Only text N.